have you come to ask for Hel's help then? She knew exactly who to call. She knew which world to access. She knew how to access it. This does not seem, at least to me, like it was a first-time encounter.
It truly never occurred to me that the factions might be between the princes. That makes way more sense. So, sorry guys, I told Ronnie I had a banter topic, so now she's eagerly waiting to hear what the banter topic is. Have you watched or heard of Off Campus?
I never hear of anything TV related until you tell me, to be clear. But I did see it in the Discord this week as it pertains to heated rivalry relations.
This is why I'm so excited, because this is actually a timely, relevant banter topic, because I'm pretty sure this show came out on Friday. Maybe, I don't know what day of the week. It came out last week. It's Sunday. We're like on top of it, which is pretty good. I put this timeline on Instagram, but basically, same as you. Friday morning, I woke up having no idea what Off Campus was. And then someone pinged about it in the Discord. And I was like, I'm bored. I'll look up the trailer for Off Campus. I was like, oh, I think I want to watch this.
Should I look it up right now?
You should look it up right now. But Derek was playing a show. Not only was Derek playing a show, Derek was playing a show from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., which I'm not going to go to. There's no way I'm going to that show. No Sorry, babe. Love you. I'm not going to that show. So I was like, I have a whole night. I have a whole night to myself. I'm going to watch this show. I watched 5 episodes in a row of Off Campus. I cannot remember the last time I watched 5 episodes in a row of anything.
Oh, another hockey situation.
Okay, so it is a hockey situation. It's a very different hockey situation. This is straight hockey, not gay hockey, which, you know, it
does look straight.
So far, it's a pretty straight show.
So cute.
I have finished it at this point in time. I loved it. I loved this show. So good. Okay, so I guess it's based on a series of books. I haven't read the books. I guess I should just put that out there. Like, I don't know these books. But the men in this show, the hockey team in this show.
Josh Houston is in this show? Am I seeing
Josh Houston is in this show. Josh Houston, which our listeners will probably know as the man who is rumored to be playing Xaden. I got to say, Josh Houston plays a real asshole in this show. So I'm kind of like, oh, I kind of hope he's not playing Xaden. I mean, Josh Houston is in it. Like, I guess the main characters are a hockey team. Like, my understanding of this series is that there's these 4 guys who are on a hockey team, and I think there's 4 books, and each one of them is basically like their love stories, basically. I love these men. I love the relationships they have with each other. I love the friendships they have with each other. Like, I love the emotional maturity of these men. And of course, they're all supposed to be in college. And this is the same thing I had with Zeta. Remember when we read Fourth Wing and I was like, this man is 42. This man is not 20. Like, he does not have the emotional maturity of a 20-year-old. But it's the same thing where it's like their friendships are like so much deeper than what I would think of as 20-year-old male friendships. Like, they talk about real shit. They still struggle. Like, they absolutely still struggle with opening up to each other. But I'm just like, oh my God, like, these boys are so good. And the same thing, there's like basically 2 female main characters, and their friendship is so sweet. And like, the romance is great, but I'm like, oh my God, the friendships on this show are so good.
Love that.
So I highly recommend, if you haven't watched it, you should watch it. It's really fun. You specifically, I think, would like it. I don't know if you have time to watch it, but, you know, it's really fun.
I'll dabble. Why not? I'll watch during Slice Sunday tonight. Slice and salad
Exactly.
Sunday.
I will say Derek had no interest in watching it when I showed him the trailer, so I'm not sure if Connor's going to be all about it, but he might be. I actually feel like Connor is way more romance inclined.
He got hooked by heated rivalry, I will say.
Yeah. Well, so did Derek. I mean, heated rivalry really
grips you. Yeah.
Yeah, really. Oh, sorry. I forgot this is a podcast.
Yeah. Abby was clenching her fists. He also gets hooked by like romance reality TV shows. So I feel like there's hope in that regard too. I'm trying to think what else romancy he got hooked on. I mean, Wuthering Heights, honestly.
God, Derek hated Wuthering Heights, so yeah. No, yeah. I think Connor could like it.
He could like it.
And I'd actually love Connor to watch it because I'd love to hear Connor's take on it. Like, what I actually loved about this is these are guys on a hockey team and they talk about their hockey, but like they never talk about sports. Like, you know how guys are always talking about sports? There's only one conversation, a guy having a conversation with another guy about sports. And it's actually supposed to show how distant they are and how unconnected they are. And I was like, I actually love that they put this in here. This is fucking brilliant because guys talking about sports is such a trope. So well done. Well done.
Yeah. Cool.
It's good.
Okay.
It's good.
I feel like I have a lot to just like catch up on the world, like in the television realm. Like I haven't even started thinking about when I'm going to see The Devil Wears Prada 2.
I know.
I've heard is actually I don't know. I've heard mixed things. I've heard
mixed things too.
I've heard certainly not as good as the first, which, like, to be clear, the first has such a high bar. It's like one of the most iconic rom-com.
Would we call it a rom-com?
I mean, I guess it's not rom, but it's certainly com.
Certainly com, but I'm not sure I'd call it rom. Like, I would say the romance is third string at best in that movie.
But I feel like the rom is with herself.
A self rom-com.
Yeah, but it has, like, I would put it in the bucket of, like, it's a feel-good. I'm watching something for feel-good purposes. Girl power.
A movie about choosing a career to work for the most toxic person ever over a boy who loves you. Yes, that is a feel-good movie. I guess in the end, she does leave her, but...
I am who I am.
Isn't
we can cut that. Anyways.
No, leave it in. Leave it in. All right, what I was going to bring up, and I do think this is fair on our TV topic, is the Fourth Wing was just announced officially ago at Amazon Prime, which is also part of why I watched Off Campus, because I was like, how do they do? Yes, we're very excited about it. I actually didn't even realize it wasn't officially a go, and then I was like, I guess this was like a maybe situation. Having watched Off Campus, I think Amazon Prime could actually do a really good job with this. Like, I'm really excited about it.
Okay.
Do you know Boys of Tommen? Has that come across your like algorithm at all?
This is exactly what I was about to bring up. I'm very nervous. Nervous.
Do you watch it? Did you read it?
I haven't read it, but I did furiously scroll the comments on the casting announcements, like on TikTok, on Instagram, and people are mixed at best. I would say not happy about the male castings.
And I am of the opinion, I'm allowed to express my opinions, I think. I'm of the opinion.
This is our podcast.
We all need to chill the fuck out. Like, we all need to calm the fuck down, I think. Especially with Fourth Wing, right? Like, I think we've gotten heated rivalry. We've gotten Off Campus. I think they have both been huge wins for the romance genre, right?
I agree.
If we are out here champing at the bit for these shows to be made, right? If we're out here like being like, oh my God, we want a Fourth Wing show. We love it. We want it. We cannot freak out about casting without seeing the show, right? Like that's just my mindset at this point, that it's like we cannot both be, we need this show, we need this show, we need this show. And then as soon as the cast is announced, be like, what the fuck? This isn't how I saw it in my head, right? Like,
I agree with you. And I also think many people who have read Fourth Wing have either had a reignited love for reading or they are just finding their love for reading. And I think like you and I and many people who are listening to us and many people who have read Fourth Wing have been reading books that have been adapted for a long time. And like the people who have been doing that, myself included, have seen actors who, when you look at them, you're like, okay, like wouldn't have been not how I envisioned them in my head. You like see them bring it. Like you see them embody the characters in a way that maybe you wouldn't have necessarily picked, but like it is an adaptation. I hate to keep coming back to Harry Potter, but Harry Potter was one for me. I was like, this is not how I imagined the characters in my brain. I think they did a nice job. Like they did a nice job. They took on a new persona of that character for me. So.
I think this is actually so funny. I had this crazy self-rom experience, so to speak, like a self moment of reflection. Someone commented on our Nesta deep dive. Like this was from so long ago, but someone commented on it and was like, I could really see Emilia Clarke playing Nesta, who of course played Daenerys Targaryen. But I have I had completely, like, for a moment, I was like, Emilia Clarke, she's so sweet. She's so bubbly. I don't know that she could pull that off. Completely forgetting that she had played Daenerys Targaryen, Mother of Dragons, like completely forgetting it.
Yeah.
And this is when I'm like, okay, we need to trust the casting process, because I would never, like, the Emilia Clarke, like, we see now, the Emilia Clarke on Instagram, it's like, you don't look at that and think Mother of Dragons, but she fucking brought it. She was so good, right? So, like, anyway, that's my slight rant for the day. I just think we all gotta trust. I'm gonna be very disappointed if the Fourth Wing casting announcements are met with just like, that's not sated, that's not violent, you know, like, I just think we should all have an open mind. Gonna say,
like, I'm gonna get crucified. I know that I'm gonna get crucified. Don't come for me. I know you're going to, but like, I can see Josh Houston personally. I can see it. I can see after Dune, the show.
I didn't watch it. I would like to watch it.
I can see it with some good acting and a good opposite. I could see it. Like, actors, there's a reason they're actors. I'll say that.
I agree. Like, this is what I'm saying. If it is Josh Houston, do I personally think Josh Houston would be better for Bodhi than for Xaden? Yes.
Absolutely.
On looks alone,
of course.
Yes. But if it is Josh Houston,
also on other things, to be clear. Also the way that he acts. I think he'd be better.
Now that I've seen him in Off Campus, I'm like, what is the name of that
show? He could be Off Campus. He would be a great whiny bitchy Bodhi.
That is essentially the character he's playing. It is basically an audition reel for Bodhi. But
love that.
Also, guys, sorry if you haven't read Fourth Wing and you're just here for Crescent City. Sorry, we're talking about Fourth Wing so much. If they do cast him, I trust that there's vision and that there's a reason for it, right? I'm going to trust the professionals to do their job here. That's just, I guess, the thesis of what I'm trying to say. But with that, hi, I'm Abby.
I'm Ronnie.
And this is Dragons in the Details, the podcast that helps you better understand your favorite fantasy books through a series of deep dive episodes. This season, we are on our third deep dive of this season. We are covering Crescent City. This episode will contain Crescent City and ACOTAR spoilers. This episode is being published in May 2026, so that is all 5 ACOTAR books that have been published so far. We are not in ACOTAR 6, 7, or 8 territory yet. If you are there, if you are listening from the future, I hope the books are good. All right, second disclaimer, this podcast is rated R. These are spicy books. We curse. We are spicy people. If you want to listen to it with your children, feel free, but you have been warned. Each week, we dive into a specific topic in depth. This week, we are diving into the world of Hel and its cutest kitty. That's cute. Prince Aedis. We come with receipts. We have quotes to back up our theories, so you can follow along if you're skeptical. Ron, do you want to make any announcements?
Yes. As always, Deep Dive music is brought to you by Schwoodley. That is a real artist. You can find him on Spotify. So if you like our Deep Dive jingle, check him out on Spotify. We have a new thing we're doing this season with our fun questions. So you might know in our episode outlines, we always ask a fun question before we get started. Coming up with those questions, hard work. So that's your job now. So
we're lazy, guys.
Yeah, we love to outsource. So if you would like us to read your fun question on air, please submit your fun question to us via TikTok or Instagram DM or in the contact form on our website. That's dragonsinthedetails.com. And we'll read your fun question on an episode. We do try to keep them thematic, so it would be good if you could make your fun question somewhat related to Crescent City, ACOTAR. If it's just about us, like we'll answer you, but we're not gonna answer it as a fun question because we're trying to keep these topical. So fun questions, submit those. We want to read them. We want to answer your fun questions. Finally, and this is if you're not new here, you know this by now, but it really helps us out when you subscribe to us on whatever channel you listen on, when you like our episodes, when you like our posts on social media. Really helps us out. We want to do more of this for you guys. We are working on bringing more of this to you in various forms, written, additional. So we're working hard on that, but we get a lot out of it when you like our stuff. So please like, follow, comment. We love it when you do.
I actually read something recently that one of the biggest factors for growth of a podcast is the number of ratings it has on Apple Podcasts specifically. So even if you do not listen to us on Apple Podcasts, if you wouldn't mind throwing us a star rating, doesn't matter how many stars it is. It can truly be any. And you don't need to leave a written review. You can just do the star rating. That would be hugely helpful. We would greatly appreciate it if you like us. If you don't, it's fine too.
So thanks in advance. Back to you.
All right. Fun question. So this is from Violet the Emoji. The question is, which house would you want to be in? And which house would you actually be in? I am assuming these are Crescent City houses.
Yes. Crescent City houses. That was my assumption. Violet the Emoji, you did not specify, but we assumed that was the case when we answered this question.
Typically this is a question about Hogwarts houses, but this is a Crescent City episode. So.
Yeah. Also, we have a mostly Maasverse page at this point, so it would be I would be surprised actually if somebody were asking about our Hogwarts house, to be honest with you.
Oh my God, but this does remind me. Quick aside, /COSM, apologies. So the last episode, I believe we had a question about would we rather go dancing at Rita's, go to the White Raven, or go to the Yule Ball.
Yeah.
Yes. So Swizzy, who was the originator of this question, did write it to us and said, oh crap, I meant the Yule Mass Ball, not the Yule Ball, which we probably should have. Hot. It is a slight Throne of Glass spoiler that there's something called a Yule Mass Ball. My answer remains unchanged, though. I would still rather go to Rita's of those three, but I just wanted to call that out. So thank you, Swizzy, for letting that be known that it was not meant to be a Harry Potter reference. That's our bad, too. We probably should have called that.
That does make more sense. The Yulmus Ball makes more sense.
It certainly makes more sense.
Yeah. I would attend the Yulmus Ball.
If I were invited,
I would attend.
I'd certainly attend. Yeah, sounds fun. I can see Rory's butt. It's very cute right now. All right. Do you want to start with this fun question? Or do you want me to?
I can start. Okay, so the questions are what would I want to be in and what would I actually be in? I would want to be, and to be clear, they are different because what I want to be is actually different from who I know that I am. So I'll just start there. But I would want to be in Earth and Blood, definitely. I just want to be in Earth and Blood. All the people I like, I feel like are in Earth and Blood. But I know that in my heart of hearts, I'm in probably Flame and Shadow, maybe Sky and Breath on my best day. I think that's the case.
I always thought it was interesting that the shifters and the Fae are in different houses, right? Given that at the end of the day, they are actually the same thing. I always thought that was interesting. I agree with you. We would both actually be in Flame and Shadow. The difference is my answer is I would also want to be in Flame and Shadow. That's actually the house I'd want to be in.
I want to be with the shifters. I think the shifters are fucking cool.
Oh, the wolf pack sucks. They suck.
But Lydia.
Yeah. I don't think she's hanging out at the house too much, but yeah.
I mean, she could feasibly end up in Flame and Shadow, but we'll see.
She could, I could see her in Flame and Shadow. Yeah, I would want to be in Flame and Shadow, just hanging out at the bar, listening to jazz with Jesiba is just what I would want to be doing anyway. So it's just going to be Flame and Shadow for me.
Unfortunately, we're not going to be doing that because she's gone.
This is book two.
Book two. Sure.
All right, that was a fun one. Thank you, Violet the Emoji. All right, Ronnie, do you have any COSMs?
I do. I have a couple COSMs. One is from Jen Lee. I'll paraphrase the comment, but started the comment with random thoughts sparked by today's episode mention of if the Autumn King is actually Starborn. And the question was basically, is the Autumn King Rune's biological father? What if Lauren was discovered by the Autumn King when she was already pregnant? And this kind of goes back to like several episodes. I feel like at this point in our ACOTAR season, we have talked about the possibility of was Lauren from Prithian? 2, was Lauren Reese's sister, potentially? 3, was Lauren somehow on this like Starborn trading ring, like marital trading ring where she was being doled out basically as an asset to the Autumn King? And could she have been already pregnant somehow from Prythian, in which case she would have been a very, very valuable asset to the Autumn King? I think it's interesting. In going back and searching for anything supporting this, which admittedly we've talked at length about this. I've kind of looked for a lot of evidence already, found like very minor things, like she puts out citrus, Reese's scent is citrus and salt. But I did find one thing that's interesting, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more later. But this is, in my opinion, one of the strongest things that I have found for maybe Lauren is actually related to Rhys, and that is in House of Earth and Blood, chapter 52, Rune's shadows swirled at his shoulders like a phantom pair of wings.
Oh, fuck.
Rhys's shadows have done like Rhys has had phantom wings under the mountain before, right? Like that is very much like that's how Rhys's wings kind of like fade in and out of existence is through phantom shadows. So I like it.
So wait, I have two questions. Who would the father be?
Anybody on Prythian?
Anyone. Okay. I saw someone suggest Azrael was Rune's father, which I think would be.
So I like it because of Azrael's reaction to Selene looking like Rhys's sister. I like it for that reason.
Right.
The reason that I don't like it is because Rune's shadows are like Rhys's and Azrael's shadows are like Cormac's. So if Rune's shadows looked like Azrael's, I'd be like, done deal. Like, yeah, that works. We're done. But right now, I feel I'm getting more and more convinced that Lauren is a close relative of Rhys's.
Yeah, it's one of those theories that feels so far-fetched. Like so many things would have to happen for that to be the case, right? Like Tamlin would have to be involved. We would need a portal open to Midgard. Like so much would have to happen. And then you read a line like the Wings line, and you're like, Sarah, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Because like we know that Rune is a descendant of Lena, but like that has nothing to do with wings. That doesn't account for wings. So like
nowhere.
What's happening?
Rune shadows swirled at his shoulders like a phantom pair of wings, everyone. That's the takeaway.
Yeah, it's exactly the same.
So Genly.
It's exactly the same.
I don't know, but I like it. I don't know. It's feeling.
I don't know.
It's feeling hard to avoid. Like they look exactly the same, and Rune suddenly has phantom wings.
Yeah, and I think we're going to talk about that much more in our room.
Yeah, we'll talk more about it. Second COSM is not attributable to any one individual necessarily, but we got a bunch of comments on the prism stuff from last episode. So when Bryce's starlight goes through a prism and it fans out and it does not look the way that starlight would look, a lot of people commented about lasers and is this how lasers behave? I want to respond to those comments. Not really. A monochromatic laser. Sorry, quick science lesson again. It's not really how a laser behaves. A monochromatic laser would just bend in a prism, right? So it would just change direction and it would not split into multiple colors. And a broadband laser, like a white laser, which is what Bryce's looks like, would fan out into a spectrum like sunlight would. But Anastasia, aka it's Puzzle Bat? No, but I think she changed your name to Anastasia on Discord, made a really fun video off the back of our theory on her TikTok profile, which is at 7th Level of Hel, classic, on how it is possible. There's nothing in like our real life in terms of light that behaves the way that Bryce's light behaved through that prison, right? Like there's nothing in our real world that does that. But she made a video basically speculating that could be like that behavior could be related to exotic matter, which is theoretical. And it's also required for the creation of wormholes. And wormholes are a lot like winnowing and or world walking, which would be really interesting. Yeah. So I would recommend checking out Anastasia's video on TikTok. 7th Level of Hel is her profile. And it's very fun. But that's not what lasers do. So that is my second shout out. So
shout out to Anastasia. Anastasia also sent me this sticker. I just want to show you. I have one for you too.
So good.
I have a lot of stickers from Anastasia right here, actually. So thank you, Anastasia.
Thank you, Anastasia.
I love that. Love it. I have no notes. I think that's so great. All right. So I had a COSM. I don't have a specific person because a lot of people commented this. This was about, I can't even remember what episode it was, whether it was like our reread check-in or if it was our Starborn episode. But we were talking about the fact that Peleus, I think it was our Starborn episode, the fact that Peleus can touch the Star Sword and kills Thea with the Star Sword. That is what we are told. We have been told that by the Princes of Hel. We have also been told that by the Asteri and the history books. A lot of people wrote in saying, oh, maybe Peleus can wield the Star Sword because he got starborn power from Thea when they were having sex, the way we've seen with Hunt and Bryce and the way we think we've seen with Cassian and Nesta. First of all, guys, I totally love dot connecting. That's what we're here for. So great. I love it. Keep it up. However, similar to Ronnie, with Ronnie just did with the lasers, I don't think it works in this case for a couple reasons. So I have actually gone back and scoured the books, and I have not been able to find, if you can find, please let me know, please post it. I have not actually been able to find any reference of Peleus and Thea being lovers. It is implied because in ACOTAR, well, in Silver Flames, basically, when they're explaining the history of Fion, also I know there's a lot of ways to say Fion. I'm going to keep saying it this way, guys, because all of you are telling me different ways to say it. And at this point, you know who I'm talking about. So it's going to be Fion. Apologies. They say that he was betrayed by his queen and his general. So, like, I think the implication from that is that, like, Thea cheated on him, but it's never said, and it's never said in Crescent City that Thea and Peleus were lovers. So I don't know if that's actually in the books or if that's one of those things that has just kind of like gained traction online. I'm not sure. But even if they were lovers, they're currently fighting on two opposite sides of the war. I doubt they're having sex during that. And I've always been under the impression, and this might be a little more loosey-goosey than hard receipts, that any kind of sex transfer of powers is like a temporary thing. I never got the impression that that was like a long-term, like, oh, that can last forever. Like Hunt specifically says he can wear the mask because him and Bryce had sex the night before and she had transferred those powers over to him. Like, it's not like, oh, I've been hooking up with Bryce, so I'm becoming like more and more starborn, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think it works for this one. They do love the theorizing, and I do think we still have mysteries to uncover here with the whole Peleus and Thea thing, and we definitely will talk about it more.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, that my immediate thought was like, was he having sex with anyone starborn yet? Because we know that he allegedly eventually did with Helena, right? Like that was supposed to have happened. And it is, I mean, again, like I went and looked too. Like it's never said that Thea like slept with Peleus at any point, but they did betray Fion together.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know, maybe, but feels very unlikely.
It feels unlikely that Helena and Peleus were having sex because like it was very clear that he was like raping her. So I don't know. I do feel
unless he was raping her, which
I don't know. Thea's like warns them. Yeah, Thea like warns them, right? Is like, and she's like, you guys have to go back to Midgard because Peleus wants to force children on you, basically.
It feels more likely that he got it from somewhere else, but then again, it like the whole thing is the Asteri are not supposed to be able to control the Star Sword the way that Thea's line can. That's the whole thing. So yeah I don't know.
I have the same questions, and I think we're gonna do many episodes. We're gonna do a Dust Court quote unquote episode. We're gonna do Star Sword episodes. So we will keep talking about this. This is not the end. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Great. Shall we deep dive?
Let's deep dive.
All right.
We did get a specific request for old time's sake that one of us moxing the deep dive.
You got it.
So
you got it.
I'm so glad that you did.
Ronnie, let's start off broad here. What do we know about Hel?
Okay. So Hel is a planet with 7 different levels ruled by 7 princes. So we learn very early. It's common knowledge that this is a different place with 7 levels and 7 princes. It's not common knowledge that it's a planet, though, which is interesting. So in House of Earth and Blood, chapter 12, we learn from Hunt when he's talking about demons. They came in endless breeds and levels of intelligence, ranging from the beasts that resembled feline canine hybrids to the humanoid shape-shifting princes who ruled over Hel's 7 territories, each one darker than the last. The hollow, the trench, the canyon, the ravine, the chasm, the abyss, and worst of them all, the pit. So those are the 7 levels of Hel, and then there's humanoid shape-shifting princes who rule over all of them. Hel is a planet, and we learn that through Aedis, and it's not common. Like Hunt and Bryce learn it, which means like Hunt of all people would know that before if it was common knowledge. So in House of Earth and Blood, chapter 51, Aedis is saying, the Northern Rift opens to other places, other realms, yes, but other planets as well. What is Hel but a distant planet bound to yours by a ripple in space and time? Hel is a planet? Hunt's brows lowered. Most of the demons he'd killed and dealt with hadn't been able to or inclined to speak. Aedis shrugged with one shoulder. It is as real a place as Midgard, though most of us would have you believe it wasn't. So for whatever reason, the princes and other demons of Hel are not super inclined for folks to know on Midgard that it's real, but it's real.
Aedis also says the Northern Rift opens to other places, other realms. Yes, but other planets as well. What's a realm? What's a realm? What are we talking about? What is that? I don't know.
Yeah, I like difference between realm and planet.
I don't know. I mean, the only thing I could think of is like the death realm, but I don't know. We'll see. But even that is very intriguing.
Yeah.
Right.
I think there's also like the space-time concept. Like are realms like truly other, like fully other places, whereas planets are like we're still talking solar systems here. Like Midgard's solar system has 7 planets, and there are other star systems that we see in like the orreries where it's just like other planets just are around and we can just like see other planets. Are realms something more? Like there's rifts in space-time that you can travel to that you might not be able to just travel to through space. I think that's possible. What's interesting though is that like beneath, for whatever reason, is described as a realm. Why? Don't know.
I don't know.
All right, so that's a fun aside. Another fun aside is that Aedis also, when asked whether he's rattling the Northern Rift, says that the lesser princes do that. Levels 1 through 4. But those of us in the true dark have no need or interest in sunshine. Our plans don't involve such things. So he's basically saying, all right, these lesser princes who are closer to the surface, closer to sunshine, might rattle the rift, might care enough to do so. But we don't. We don't do that. We don't participate in that activity, which is interesting. Like, I don't know why the lesser princes would, but interesting to consider. Hel had been framed as the enemy of Midgard for centuries, but we know through like a whole big series of quotes that span the entire book, basically, that they were actually the enemy of the Asteri and the ally of the creatures that the Asteri oppress, specifically the Fae and specifically the Fae from Prythian. And we'll talk much more about that, but Aedis and Thea were mates, and Hel was ultimately the ally of the Midgardian Fae in all of their endeavors. So they were framed as, hey, like Hel was waging war against Midgard and we banished them from Midgard, but actually they were allies to Midgard and enemies of the Asteri. We'll talk much more about that. Black salt allows anyone on Midgard to commune with Hel and other worlds, but we mostly see it related to summoning beings from Hel. So in a couple instances, Bryce uses black salt to talk to Hel in one way or another. In House of Earth and Blood, she uses black salt to summon Aedis. And that's chapter 51. The quotes there, she'd crafted 2 circles with the obsidian salt. The one near the window was perhaps 5 feet in diameter. The other was big enough to hold herself and Hunt. I'm paraphrasing a bit here, but she says the obsidian salt she's faking Hunt out. She's saying, I'm going to summon a demon. Hunt does not know that she's about to summon Aedis because he's not familiar, that she is familiar with Aedis. And she says the obsidian salt is going to hold this demon. So we're going to be in this circle. We're going to be protected because the salt is going to protect us. And then that other circle of salt is going to hold the demon. Hunt eyed the circle she made, then sighed. Fine. Even though arguing with her was nearly as enticing as foreplay, he didn't feel like wasting time either. But then the temperature in the room began to drop rapidly, and as Hunt's breath began to cloud the air, as a humanoid male appeared, thrumming with dark power that made his stomach roil. Bryce grinned up at Hunt as his heart stopped dead. Surprise. She lost her fucking mind. He would kill her for this if they weren't both killed in the next few seconds. Who is that? Ice formed in the room. So also, Hel is cold. We'll talk more about that, but Hel is freezing. When you summon Hel, things get very cold. No clothing could protect against the cold this demon brought with him. It pierced through every layer, snatching the breath from Hunt's chest with clawed fingers. A shuddering inhale was the only sign of Bryce's discomfort as she remained facing the circle on the other side of the room. The male now contained inside its dark border. Aedis, she said softly. So black salt can summon somebody from Hel in a sort of like not quite all there format. But they also use black salt laced water to basically like Daimati travel to Hel in House of Flame and Shadow. That's chapter 57. And Aedis actually calls this a dreaming draft. So there's a name for this salt-laced water that Helena has been using to converse with them for some time. And that discovery, Bryce kind of puts it all together when she sees that the caves are made of black salt and she sees like a drinking bowl on the ground. She says, these caves are made entirely of black salt. Bryce said she'd seen it as soon as the ghoul had gouged lines in the wall, knew its smell, its rotting, oily feel. A taste of it had confirmed her suspicions. Hunt frowned. You think Helena was trying to summon her sister from their homeworld? So again, black salt can be used to talk to worlds other than Hel. No, Bryce said, shaking her head. She sent Celine back to be safe. She was an asshole, but she would never have done anything to jeopardize that. So what is this place then? Therian said. It was Sathya who got it first. It's to summon demons, to commune with Hel. Stunned silence rocked the room. They were her only remaining allies, Bryce explained. I'm skipping a bit, but Sathya walked to the stream. That water filters straight through the black salt, and this chamber is thick with it. She met Bryce's stare, brows nodding. Can you summon a demon if you drink water laced with black salt? And Hunt says, I've never heard of anything like that, even during my demon hunting years. And then they're ruminating a little bit more, and Bryce realizes maybe the salt helped her mind speak with Hel. Maybe someone in Hel can tell us how to kill the Asteri. Apollyon himself ate serious. Maybe he's had the answer all along. And then Hunt has a little fit, and Bryce almost has a fit as well, but ultimately they decide to drink the salt-laced water together. And Bryce lifted the bowl to her lips and drank. Bryce was falling backward and yet not moving. Her body remained kneeling, yet her soul fell, icing over into the dark, into nothing and nowhere. A presence around her, beside her, flickering with lightning. Hunt, he was with her, soul falling alongside her. And then they end up in Hel. So that black salt laced water allows them to soul travel, Daimati travel to Hel while their body stays in Midgard. You look like you want to jump in.
You know what I just realized? Yeah, I just realized something. I never made this connection before, but you said that they're soul traveling basically to Hel, right? And Hunt is flickering with lightning as he does that, which is so interesting because when Rune and Lydia talk in whatever they are, but what seems to be like soul to soul, mind to mind, right? Like they also appear as their power. So is there something about this that makes you, did Hunt see Bryce in that moment as Starlight, right? Like is it something about Bryce and Rune specifically that lets them see people as like powers, or what is that? I don't know.
Rune also appears as night though, right? Like as stars in night. So unless Lydia has something going on, which I know we kind of both think she does.
I mean, she knows a lot of things, but yeah, I mean, either way, I think it's an interesting parallel between these two, the mind talking to the princes and what Rune and Lydia are doing, right? I mean,
these two chapters, this chapter of Hunt and Bryce going to Hel is right next to, and when they call it a dream world, which we're about to talk about, is literally right next to a chapter in which Lydia says, I want to feel you here, not in some dream world. Like literally the words dream world are said, referring to where Rune and Lydia meet and Hel in two chapters next to each other, which Sarah doesn't do that by accident. She doesn't do that by accident.
Very interesting. It's very interesting.
And so this, just to round out the black salt dreaming draft piece, they find that when they drink the black salt, the way that they travel is basically traveling truly as just their soul, right? So they can't be harmed.
Right.
So they're, when they get there, again, this is still House of Flame and Shadow, chapter 59. Hunt lunged, intending to shove the Prince of the Chasm away from his mate. He went right through the demon prince. Hunt stumbled and lifted his hands. His fingers shimmered faintly with a pale bluish light. Bryce had the same aura around her. They were ghosts here. And then Apollyon later in that paragraph says, you will find that you cannot harm us, nor we you, in such a state. And Aedis later in that paragraph says, Helena learned that black salt would allow her to commune with us while protecting her mind and her soul. So she's a smart cookie.
Was she so worried about protection? Is a question.
Yeah. What were their intentions? We are told directly that Thea's trust in Hel was her downfall. So, yeah. So we're gonna talk about that.
We'll get to all that.
And then, we talked about this already, but Aedis calls it a dreaming draft. He says the dreaming draft will only last so long, so come into the temple. Which is just interesting that they have They have a name for it, and the name for it is a dreaming draft, right? Because they go to sleep and then they're dreaming. They go to a dream world. So Bryce describes Hel as a dream world, right? She says she didn't need to look to know Hunt stood beside her in whatever this place was, this dream world. And that's interesting, right? Because Apollyon visits in dreams. That's what he does. And Rude and Lydia have been meeting in a dream world for quite some time. So just commentary. More on that later, but go ahead.
Well, I think there's a question, and I don't know if you're about to get into this, but I think there's a question on whether or not we've even actually seen Hel, or if everything we've seen is just Apollyon conjuring it, right? Because he conjures Parthos, he conjures wherever the fuck him and Hunt met in that dream. Like, is this just an illusion, or is it have we actually seen parts of Hel? I don't know.
Yeah,
but I think it's a question.
I think it's a very fair question because so much of what we see of Hel is reminiscent of real things that we've already seen. Number one, it's totally empty. Number two, we're told, or I'll just summarize it here and then we'll get into it. We're told that it's where the dead go to rest, but then we also find that that's not really true, right? Because at the end of House in Flame and Shadow, we learn that there is an actual land of resting, and Aedis does not know about it. He's like, do you think I'd be allowed in?
Right.
So what is Hel?
Right.
Like, what actually is Hel? I think it's a very fair question.
Well, I didn't prep this, but I believe when Ethan is asking for Connor soul and the mystic goes down to Hel and they're talking to Thanatos said no wolf has like roamed these lands for centuries or millennia, right? Why would a wolf's soul go to Hel? I mean, it kind of makes sense that it hasn't because of what the Asteri are doing with the dead and fucking with the dead. But like, does that mean that this wolf's souls used to go to Hel before they went to whatever that eternal realm is? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what is the order of events? What is the path here for a dead soul?
Yeah.
Where does it go?
So my thought there, we are told it's a city of the dead and that it's where our dead go to rest. That does not seem to be consistent with what we learn, which is exactly what you just said. So when Bryce and Hunt are in Hel, again, still chapter 58 and 59, this is when this is all happening. It's like a city of the dead, Hunt murmured, draping a wing around Bryce. Aedis turned from where he stood at the prow. This is in a ship that looks a boat that looks exactly like the one that goes to the bone quarter, except for it's a stag's skull with like greenish light. Aedis turned from where he stood at the prow, holding in his hands a long pole that he'd used to guide them. That's because it is. He gestured with a pale hand to the buildings and temples and avenues. This is where beloved dead come to rest with all the comforts of life around them. But again, we then later see a place of resting in House of Flame and Shadow, chapter 99. This place was the opposite of where she'd gone during the drop. Rather than an endless chasm, which is one of the levels of Hel, seems intentional, it was just light, soft, golden light, gentle and easy on the gaze. It was warm and restful, and she had nowhere else she really wanted to be except, and then she thinks about Hunt. Then she sees Danica, the pack, and Lahaba, and she kind of blows a kiss to Lahaba, and then through her tears, she turned back to Jesiba. How? The second light. And Jesiba says, it took their power, but what is eternal, what is made of love, that can never be destroyed. So this, what Bryce sees, she sees Danica, she sees the pack, she sees Lahaba. This is the actual place of resting, which again, we just talked about. Aedis seems unfamiliar with the place of resting because Bryce tells him about it, and he wonders if he will ever be allowed in. So this is in House of Flame and Shadow, chapter 101. His smile turned gentler. Thea would be proud of you. And of you, Bryce said, the only gift she could offer to a Prince of Hel. She refrained from saying that Thea's pride meant shit to her, though. I think you might get to hear it from her lips one day. Aedis angled his head. Bryce had told all of them about what Jesiba had claimed, what she'd seen in that land of glowing light. You think a Prince of Hel shall be allowed in? Bryce walked up to him and kissed his cheek. Icy skin met her lips. I think a good male, regardless of where he is from, will always be allowed in. Aedis's eyes glowed bright blue, with gratitude or longing or love she didn't know, but the prince only nodded to her, then to Hunt, and walked through the northern rift into the dark. So he's asking, would I be allowed in? He's clearly allowed into Hel, so it's not it's not Hel. So my question, my thought to your exact point on what is the path of a soul that's dead? If the souls of the wolves at one point did go to Hel, because Thanatos says a soul has not been here in some time, is Hel, if they're living in the comforts of life, is Hel a purgatory, like a temporary place of resting for those who still have like power. Because Jesiba's whole point was like it took their power. Like the whole second light situation was a destruction of their power, but what is made of love, like their actual, their like intrinsic being can't be destroyed. So is that what this place of resting holds?
Yeah.
I don't really know.
Well, it could be too, right, in classic. Well, okay, so I was doing a little research on Norse mythology for this, and I believe in Norse mythology, sorry if I get this wrong, there's 2 places of resting. There is Hel, and there's also Valhalla. And I mean, this fits with heaven and hell in like classic Christianity too, right? Like there's actually 2 places. But like Valhalla, I think, is for the honored dead, and Hel is for people who die. Like Valhalla is for warriors, basically, right? Hel is for people who like die of natural causes. But what's interesting is that I believe Aedis uses the exact phrase "are honored dead" at one point, right? So it kind of implies that that's not what this Hel is. It doesn't quite line up with that mythology.
It calls them our beloved,
but yeah, our beloved dead. Okay, so maybe I'm wrong, but yeah. Could be there's like a heaven and there's a hell, or there's a Valhalla and there's a hell, that there's like 2 depending on who you are. But the idea that Thea would not end up in
it's
hell,
hard to believe.
That is what it is.
It's totally hard to believe.
Right.
I'm with you.
I don't know. Yeah,
I totally agree. And then to your other point on have we actually seen Hel, I think that's also a fair question. So there are 2 things about Hel that we are actually 3 things, 2 explicit, 1 inexplicit in my opinion, about Hel that feel like they're actually just conjurings of things that we have seen before, right? So when Bryce and Hunt arrive in Hel, they arrive in a city, looks like a city, that has a river and also has pillars and buildings carved into black rock. Sounds like we are told that it has a direct comp to the Bone Quarter, like the boat that crosses the river to the Bone Quarter.
Yeah.
But it also kind of sounds like the hewn city, right? Like carved into black rock. The city appears to be empty, and the prince has kind of implied that this is actually because they're just letting them see parts of Hel. And so this is in House of Flame and Shadow. I have such bad allergies, sorry, but I keep itching my nose.
I'm currently on a double extra strength dose of generic antihistamines because my skin exploded in hives on Saturday. And I went to the doctor and they're like, we have to reset your entire histamine system. So you're going to go on like this crazy high dose of antihistamines. I'm like, oh my God. So no worries.
Do I get Claritin? I don't know what to do right now. So that's Flame and Shadow chapter 58. The black boat that Aedis led Bryce and Hunt into was a cross between the one that had brought them into Avalon and the ones that carried the bodies to the Bone Quarter. So again, just like things that we've seen that exist. In lieu of a stag's head, it was a stag's skull at the prow, greenish flame dancing in its eyes as it sailed through the cave. The eerie green light illuminated black rock carved into pillars and buildings, walkways and temples, ancient and empty. Bryce had never seen a place so void of life, so still. Even the Bone Quarter had a sense of being lived in, albeit by the dead, but here, nothing stirred. So, a few things here. We've got the boat, obviously, which is Avalon in the Bone Quarter. We have black rock carved into pillars and buildings, walkways, and temples. That is very hewn city-like.
Hewn city.
We've got the green light. That's Hel and Hel alone, in my opinion. And then we also have the Temple of Chaos, which looks exactly like Urd's temple. So this is in House of Flame and Shadow chapter 59. The Temple of Chaos is a sacred place. Apollyon said sharply, we shall never defile it with violence. And then Hunt, in his perspective, refers to it as a near mirror to temples back home. Indeed, its layout was identical to the last temple Hunt had stood in, Urd's temples. In lieu of the black stone altar at the center of the temple, a bottomless pit was the main focal point. 5 chairs of carved black wood encircled it.
It also not, this just occurred to me, but it's like Council of the High Lords too, right? Like they're all sitting around a fountain basically, but like, yeah.
But it's a black pit.
Interesting.
Here.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah. So I think it's fair to call into question, like, is something going on from a like Daemati perspective that is actually just calling on things that Bryce and Hunt know and recognize, that is like making them see a Hel that they know, a Hel that makes them comfortable? I don't know. I think it's a fair question because everything that we're seeing is like called to recognition in some other way. Yeah. But also, maybe this is just writing. Maybe we're just being told it looks like something else because that's how Sarah's describing it to us. I think either one is fair, but I do think it's fishy.
I mean, I think it's undeniable that this is meant to make us think of the hewn city, right? And then it's just a question of chicken and egg, right? Have the Princes of Hel seen the hewn city, or was the hewn city inspired by Hel?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. I mean, we will talk about Lord Thanatos, guys. Not this episode, but we will talk.
But not this episode.
We will talk about Lord Thanatos. Not this episode, but we will. Fear not.
Yeah.
Yes. And then really, go ahead.
Just one more little thing for this. And I wasn't even thinking about it in terms of maybe this not being real, but I only clocked this on my like 5th reread of this passage, and I kind of freaked out when I read it. So the quote is, Bryce pulled truth teller, for this is when they're all sitting in the circle, right? Bryce pulled truth teller from the sheath at her side. Here, at least, the blades didn't pull at each other. She has the star sword and she has truth teller with her, but they're not pulling at each other in Hel. Why? I don't know why. I think that's very interesting, though. Like, is it because none of this is real, or is there something about Hel that calms them, that quiets them? I do not.
I did very much assume that it's because they weren't physically there, but it is interesting to think about whether it's because, because Hel is where they can just chill out.
Don't know. Yeah, I mean, it could be because they're not physically there, but Bryce can pull truth teller out. You know what I mean? Like, it's like she can still touch it.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Anyway, that's all we have to say about that for now.
Okay. The only other thing that I really wanted to call out that we know about Hel is that Hel did have warring factions, and they overthrew the Asteri by uniting against them. So we learn this when Bryce says, and she's so explicit for us, and I know Hel once had warring factions, but you sorted out your shit and marched as one to kick the Asteri out of Hel. A year later, you hunted them down across the stars and found them on Midgard. You fought them again, and it didn't go well that time. You got jettisoned from Midgard and have been trying to creep back through the Northern Rift ever since. So it's interesting to think about, right? We see Apollyon, Aedis, and Thanatos more or less put up a united front, at least Apollyon and Aedis. Thanatos seems like kind of a fucking wild card, but like they generally seem pretty united. At one point, they definitely were not. And they did come together and overthrow the Asteri and then make a point to hunt them down after they overthrew them to Midgard and lost.
Truly never occurred to me that the factions might be between the princes. It's obvious, like, that makes way more sense, actually. Given all the, like, kind of clues we get, that makes way more sense.
But it doesn't necessarily.
I always assumed there was just, like, something else on Hel that they were fighting against. But but this makes sense,
it certainly could have been something else, someone else, but like the fact that they united to kick the Asteri out makes it seem like they came together against the Asteri. So it was either some other entity entirely that was not the Asteri that they were like warring against, or it was each other. And it kind of feels like warring factions would imply that it was each other. Yeah. Which, like, Thanatos seems like a real dick, so it wouldn't surprise me if that were the case, especially given there is a hierarchy, right? Yeah. So, like, Apollyon is the most powerful. Everybody below him, like, all of the other princes are meant to, like, kind of defer to him. And I could see the first 4 princes, like, you could see that power struggle come up, especially Thanatos being who he is and being Prince of the Ravine. So
I totally agree.
What else did you have? I had like a bunch of other just nothing quotes, but I can scan them while you pile on.
I don't have that much more. I think just a couple things. We talked about the Northern Rift. So the demons of Hel are scared of Bryce's starlight. We are told in Crescent City 1, which is the quote is, Hunt had no words in his head, his heart, as Bryce shoved the burning starlight into the gate. White light blasted from the gate's clear stone. It filled the square, shooting outward for blocks. Demons caught in its path screamed as they were blinded, then fled. Like they remembered who it had once belonged to. The starborn prince had battled their hordes with it. That's what we get in CC1. Oh, yeah. A lot of you guys have said, can you start referring to the books by their numbers instead of their names? Because people just completely lose track of their names. I'm going to honor that request because I also completely lose track of the names. So
Right.
that was Crescent City
Okay.
1.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. You can keep doing it your way. It's okay. But that's Crescent City 1. Obviously, this actually makes no sense based on what we learn later, right? Because the Starborn Fae were allied with Hel. So why would the demons run from the Starborn light unless it is Asteri light? Is basically like it just another point in the Asteri direction is what I'm going to say here. The other things we learn, the Asteri have trouble feeding off Hel's magic. So the quote we that have for that is, this was when they're in Hel, and I'm going to put Hel in quotation marks now because we're not sure. But the quote is, but how, Hunt asked, fighting past that numbing, blissful chill in his chest, did you kick the Asteri out of Hel the first time? They had trouble feeding off our magic, Thanatos said, a voice thick with disgust, and they found our powers rivaled their own. They fled before we could kill them. So for whatever reason, the Asteri can't really feed off Hel's magic, which I thought was interesting. Also interesting, which we have not talked about, maybe we'll talk about in the Hunt deep dive. In that scene when talking to the princes, has this like blissful cold coming over him that Bryce does not seem to have. I don't know if that's like related to him being of Hel or if something else is going on here, but like he keeps talking about this like chilling numbness, maybe meant to reflect his emotional state. I don't know. But I thought that was very interesting. And that's pretty much all I have. The only other, well, we talked about the temple. Did you mention that it was a temple of
Temple
chaos?
of Chaos looks exactly like Earth's temple.
Okay. I think it's interesting that this is specifically the Temple of Chaos because I believe Apollyon tells us that he, and therefore I'm assuming all these princes were birthed from chaos and the void. Right. So I think it's interesting that they both have a temple to her. They worship her and she is their mother. And this looks like Erd's temple, right? Like, are we getting set up for Erd and chaos potentially being the same? I don't know. I did do a little research onto chaos and we'll talk about that later, but I think the parallels that are being drawn here are interesting. That's all I had for this one.
I think like we'll talk about obviously Apollyon a little bit later, but like Apollyon also claims to have the power of the void and of chaos. The void and of chaos. Their powers run in my blood.
Right.
What the fuck is the power of chaos?
Right.
Like you have a temple to her.
Yeah. I have ideas.
So it's interesting. I'm trying to look at what else I just have like evidence that Hel was framed basically. So as long as you guys trust me that Hel was framed as enemy of Midgard and then was later proven to be allies to the Fae. Stalwart allies, if we're being specific. Then we're good. Cool.
Yeah. I mean, we spent 2 whole books getting this story. I think we're good.
Guys, it's very hard to actually pull evidentiary quotes that are concise for things like that because we learn them over the span of literally 1,800 pages. But
yeah,
they were said to be enemies. They're actually allies. And then Hunt has a little moment where he's like, "Oh, I'm proud to be a son of Hel," which I actually thought was very sweet.
I know.
Very sweet.
I thought that was very sweet.
Okay. All right, Abby, what creatures do we know are from Hel?
All right, so I basically focused on. We have questions later, guys, about the Kristallos and the
Shepherd.
Reapers. Wait, do we? No. Yeah. We have Kristallos and the Shepherd. So I'm mainly focusing on lower class demons, just to set the stage there. All right, so we get a view of kind of the general demons of Hel in Crescent City 1 when they are invading Lunathion. So the quote we get is, from Hunt's tense shoulders, she knew the horde was as unnerving for him as it was for her. Leathery winged, horned humanoids that seemed to be grunt soldiers, bone white reptilian beasts that crawled on all fours, hounds of war, skeletal beings with 2 large jaws stacked with needle-like teeth that gleamed with greenish slime. There were more, so many more, things that slithered, things that flew, things that surveyed Midgard with milky, sightless eyes and bayed at the anticipated bloodlust. I'm sorry, I actually think that quote is from Crescent City 3, but it's whatever. It's still describing the general hordes of Hel. Obviously, she threw in leathery winged there, right? Like, she has to know what she's doing.
She also threw in sightless and slithered, and so many of these are blind. Like, I'm going to throw in the worm. I think the worm is definitely fucking from Hel.
I agree. I agree that it seems like the worm is probably from Hel. Yeah. So that's kind of our general demons. I'll just go over quickly the vampires and the Daemonaki. I don't think there's that much interesting stuff to talk about there. But we know, so the quote we have for the vampires, I don't know how it's said, apologies. The vamps had worked hard to get people to forget the tiny fact that they'd all come from hell, lesser demons themselves, that their ancestors had defected from their seven princes during the first wars and fed the Asteri Imperial Legions vital intel that aided in their victory, traitors and turncoats who still had held a demon's craving for blood. So we are later told by the princes that the vampires and the reapers were actually the generals of their armies and that they defected and went to the Asteri. I don't know that we're ever really told why, though. We're told why the reapers followed. The reapers followed because the vampires were their food, right? But I think there's a question as to like, why would the vampires choose to ally with the Asteri over being the generals in the princes' armies? I think that's an open question. And then Daemonaki were basically told are Vanir demon hybrids, for lack of a better word. So the quote we have for that is, Hell was severed from them by time and space, but still accessible through twin sealed portals at the North and South Poles, the Northern Rift and Southern Rift, respectively, or by idiots who tried to summon demons through salts of varying powers. It was why the creeps existed in their world at all. Most had been hunted after those long ago wars between realms, but every so often, demons got loose, reproduced, usually by force. The result of these horrible unions, the Daemonaki. Those walking the streets were diluted, weaker incarnations and hybrids of the purebred demons in hell. So that's pretty icky. There's an entire race of people, Vanir, again, out there who are just demon babies by force, which we don't love. I'm gonna kind of dive deep into the Reapers
Not
now.
on the
Did you have
Daemonaki
anything
or the
else before I did
vampires, no.
that? Okay. All right. So the Reapers. I think the Reapers are really interesting. So we find out in Crescent City 2 that they're originally from Hell, right? So the quote we have is, "You mean to tell me that there are Reapers who can simply defect and serve Hell? From whence," good use of whence, "from whence do you think the Reapers first came? Who first ruled them? Ruled the vampires. The Reapers chose Midgard, but I am not surprised some have changed their minds." So that is, I believe, the Underking speaking to Bryce about the Reapers. And then we get confirmation in Crescent City 3 from the princes that the Reapers and vampires used to be their generals. So this is the quote I was alluding to before. Thanatos picked up the narrative, resting his helmet on a knee. The vampires and reapers had defected to the Asteri. They betrayed us, the cowards. From the shadows behind him, his hounds snarled, as if in agreement. They'd been our captains and lieutenants for the most part. Our armies were in shambles without them. We needed time to rebuild. So, reapers and vampires were the generals. They defected to the Asteri. Now they live in Midgard. We find out in Hell, the reapers fed on and ruled the vampires. And when the vampires defected to this world, the reapers followed their food source and found other beings on Midgard to be a veritable feast. So they have left the vampires to themselves, feeding as they pleased on the rest of the populace. I think what's so interesting about the Reapers is what they eat and how they eat it, right? So we're told that they eat souls, but that is also kind of conflated with First Light, right? So in Crescent City 2, we have Ethan might have continued to lie there, hoping some Reaper would come suck the soul from his body had Bryce not rushed over. This is when Ethan breaks the coffee table and is quite embarrassed about his actions, as he should be. And then in Crescent City 3, we see Sigrid eat the souls of both the Prime and the Astronomer, which is pretty graphic too. So with the Prime we get for Sigrid, this is Sigrid literally leaning over her grandfather's body. As light flared up through the Prime's mouth, illuminating his hollowed cheeks. And then Sigrid was breathing it in, drinking it in, his soul, his first light, right? So she's literally eating his soul. And then with Thanatos, we get, "It has been a long time since a mortal fly buzzed all the way down to hell. I will taste this one's soul as I once sip from them like fine wine." So we have this idea of soul eating. Then with the Prime, we have his soul, his first light. And I'm just throwing this out there because this feels very Asteri, right? And I do think I want to shout out Morgan on this. I think she called this out, right? But like we have this idea of kind of creatures from hell consuming first light. And we have obviously the Asteri consuming first light. So are they actually kind of competing for resources potentially? Like, is there some kind of cosmic battle over resources here going on that we haven't really been clued into? Right. So what they are, the Reapers. So we have half-lives, people called them, humans in Vanir who had once been alive, who had faced death and offered their souls to the Underking as his private guards and servants instead. the cost to live forever, unaging and unkillable, but never again able to sleep, eat, fuck. Vanir did not mess with them. And we do later see this with Sigrid, right? She chooses, instead of to be raised again by Hypaxia, she chooses to become a Reaper and serve the Underking. This just kind of raises a lot of questions to me as to how the Underking is able to do this, right? Like, how is he able to negotiate that souls can just be given to him? He's a Barroway, right? Like, he's a Barroway. How is he able to do this? I don't understand. They really don't like the Star Sword, which this is when kind of Bryce and Rune learn the power of the Star Sword. So the quotes we have for that are, this is when they've abducted Rune in Crescent City 2. The Reapers floated over the sewers river, black robes drifting, Rune unconscious dangled between two of them, the Star Sword still trapped on him. Either they were too stupid to disarm him or they didn't want to touch it. One of the Reapers drifted closer to Rune as they caught him. The hilt of the Star Sword brushed against its robes. It hissed, recoiling. I think so what's interesting is, like, these Reapers won't even, like, they don't even want to touch the hilt of the Star Sword, right? Like, the Autumn King will touch it, but he doesn't want to touch it for too long. Like, I think it's just interesting. And again, we'll get into it. Like, who can touch the Star Sword and for how long, and like what that implies about them. And then we get, obviously, Bryce kills a Reaper with the Star Sword. So we get the Star Sword staying with light, her power flowing into it, activating it. And nothing had ever felt so right, so easy as plunging the blade into the bony chest of the wounded Reaper. It arced, bellowing, black blood spurting from its withered lips. So obviously this is the first time we see the Star Sword killing the unkillable, so to speak, right? So this is when Bryce kind of realizes what it is. I just think it's interesting that Thea made the Star Sword. Well, we don't really know. We don't really know, but we are basically told, right, that Thea made the Star Sword and Truth Teller in the effort of overthrowing the Asteri. But in that vein, it is also able to kill things from hell, right? Like, why is it able to kill things from hell if the goal was killing things Asteri related, which I think is interesting. And with both the Star Sword and Ataraxia, when Nesta kills Lanthus, both of these unkillable things have black blood, right? And we know that Vespers had black blood, but other Asteri don't seem to have black blood. But, like, what is the link there? What does that signify? This I thought was kind of crazy. So this is kind of the most wild thing to me that the Reapers can do. They are able to activate the gate in the Bone Quarter. Right. So this is when Hunt and Bryce are in the Bone Quarter fighting the Underking. We get the crystal of the dead gate began to glow white, not from her touch, but as if the Reapers were chanting, wakening the dead gate somehow. Right. We're basically told only, like, the horn can activate the power of the gate. And the horn was a trove item made by the Asteri. Right. Like, Bryce basically blows the horn. Micah blows the horn, and that, and Starborn power, again, which we think is Asteri power, is able to activate the gates. Why are these Reapers able to activate the dead gate?
I agree with you on the gate piece in particular, and I think it has something to do with the fact that they are from hell. Like, specifically that they're from hell. And the reason that I think that is because of what we've seen with synth and its ability to help activate the horn, and hellfire and its ability to activate the horn. I think that there's something, and, like, obviously we'll talk about it later in this episode, but I do think that there's something very, very interesting going on with beings of hell and the ability to open gates to other worlds. And I think the Reapers have, like, the Reapers probably have a leg up or something else going on, because they do have 1 foot in, 1 foot out on life in general. And I really want to draw connections between them and the Surreal, but I don't have great, other than the black blood, honestly, I don't have great connections between the two.
No, I tend to agree. I would tend to agree. Yeah. Did you have any other creatures?
Well, I did have the Deathstalkers. There are Deathstalkers. They're creepy fucking pets of the Prince of the Pit. We learn about them first in House of Sky and Breath. Hunt recognizes them because he has been scarred by one of them before. So he recognizes it's a Deathstalker. Even the burbling fountain beyond them seemed to quiet at the name. What's that? Lethal assassins bred by the Prince of the Pit. He keeps them as pets. Athalar's wings rustled. Had a shadow passed over the sun? I've only dealt with them once. I've got a scar down my back from it. And Apollyon kind of acknowledges it later and is like, yeah, I'm, like, sorry about the scar. I acknowledge that, one of my Deathstalkers gave that to you. Interestingly, in the final battles, Thanatos is kind of responsible for the Deathstalkers and the army of them, and has kind of like not very leashed control over the army of Deathstalkers. I don't think there's really that much, honestly, to talk about when it comes to the Deathstalkers, just that they're another flavor of hound-like beings that are actually bred by Apollyon, but seem to be controlled by Thanatos. So we'll talk more about them when we talk about Thanatos, or I will.
I think the main thing that's still just so crazy about the Hel creatures versus Asteri creatures is the tight similarities between them. They just like a Deathstalker sounds a lot like a Daglin Hound, right? Like, in my opinion, like they seem very similar. So is that just writing style? Is that an intentional choice? I don't know.
Yeah, I think the only other thing maybe worth mentioning here, and again, we have no real evidence for any of this, but all of the Hel-like creatures that are creatures of Midgard recognized are in House of Flame and Shadow. And so that begs the question, what is going on with the wraiths, the Draki, and the dragons, who are not confirmed creatures of Hel, but all have very Hel-like properties, right? Wraiths are like shadows, basically, that can inhabit other bodies. It's very, very Prince of Hel like. What's going on with the Draki? Dragons have like one of the only types of fire that can harm a Prince of Hel. How would you have that if you don't hail from Hel in some regard?
Right. The dragons are by the mist. Well, Ariadne is used by the mystic to protect against Hel. Now, how well she does that, I think, is a question that is worth asking, given what happens. But yeah. And I think it's interesting too with the race, because obviously we have wraiths in ACOTAR, right? So if the wraiths are from Hel, are Nuala and Saradwin from Hel? But
right.
Yeah. All right. Next question. All right, Ronnie, what is the Kristallos?
The Kristallos is a demon from Hel with a lot more to it than that. But the Kristallos is a demon from Hel. The physical description of a Kristallos is actually especially creepy. The description, at least, is from House of Earth and Blood, chapter 46. Sorry, Crescent City 1, chapter 46. And most of the Kristallos involvement that we get is from Crescent City 1. It has a grayish, near translucent hide. So it's giving like deep Hel, because near translucent usually is associated with demons that don't see light. It has clear blood, creepy. A clawed hand and crystalline talons. So it's called a Kristallos because it literally looks crystalline, which crystal in this world is a conduit. So that's interesting, worth noting. The Kristallos is blind, and it also has clear teeth. So crystalline talons, clear teeth, clear blood, near translucent hide, and blind, like sightless eyes, puts together a very, very creepy picture. Its venom negates magical abilities. We don't actually learn it when Micah is downed, but it should have given us pause when an angel was downed and then Bryce survived, right? That probably should have been a little flag in our brains. But just for context, for those who have forgotten, because I learned on my reread that I forgot most of what happened in Crescent City 1. We first meet the Kristallos in the very beginning of House of Earth and Blood. I'll just like explain the unexplained at that point, right? Danica does herself in and everybody around her in through synth and accidentally summons the Kristallos demon because synth has obsidian salt in it. So the Kristallos is summoned. We meet the Kristallos demon. At that point, Bryce sees it, chases it, thinks that the Kristallos demon is responsible for Danica and the pack's death the entire time. But later we learn, no, it was actually the synth. And the synth, because of its obsidian salt content, summoned the Kristallos. So let's talk about the Kristallos in more depth.
To be fair, real quick, not to besmirch the dead, Micah did inject Danica with the synth. She didn't do it herself, but yes.
Yes, Micah did murder Danica by injecting her with synth. And Micah had also been summoning the Kristallos demon to try and hunt down the horn for himself, which we will talk about more as well. Micah, bad dude. Glad that Bryce vacuumed him up. Do not miss him. House of Earth and Blood, chapter 50. is when we kind of start researching the Kristallos demon, or one of the early days when we're researching the Kristallos demon. Have you come across any information about the Kristallos negating magic? Days later, Hunt, this is Hunt, he couldn't stop thinking about it, how it felt for his power to just sputter and die in his veins. No, I still haven't found anything about the creation of the Kristallos except that it was made from the blood of the first starborn prince and the essence of the Star Eater himself. Nothing about it negating magic. Rune nodded at him. You've never come across a demon that can do that? And I'm skipping a bit. Not one. Witch spells and Gorsian stones negate magic, but this was different. He dealt with both. Before they'd bound him using the witch ink on his brow, they'd shackled him with manacles hewn from the Gorsian stones of the Dolos Mountains, rare metal whose properties numbed one's access to magic. Skipping a bit again. Rune motioned to the ancient book he'd left on the table days ago, still open to a passage about the Starborn Fae. If the Star Eater himself put his essence in the Kristallos, that's probably what gave the demon the ability to eat magic, just as Prince Peleus's blood gave it the ability to look for the horn. This is early days, right? This is before, like, we know a thing about a thing. But in this early research, we are learning that Apollyon allegedly creates the Kristallos from Prince Peleus's blood and his own essence to hunt the horn and so that the venom negates magic. And when Bryce later gets the venom removed, because again, Bryce does have an encounter with the Kristallos the night that Danica dies, there is venom in her leg. She never bothers getting it taken out. Hunt staples her injury shut. He has like a whole guilt trip about it. She never gets it removed because she wants to feel the pain. She and Hunt go to Hypaxia, who I don't believe they know is Hypaxia at the time, to get it removed. This is in chapter 61. Again, you got to keep a lot of stuff straight in these fucking books. It's apparent that the venom has actually been feeding on her because it's been in her for so long. So not only has it been kind of suppressing her magic, but it has been feeding on her for the duration that it's been in her, which at this point has been almost 2 years. I think like a year and a half or something like that.
Yeah.
With his wound the other night, the poison had not yet taken root. With an injury like yours, deep and old, the venom is a kind of organism. It feeds off you. It won't want to go easily, especially after so long meshing itself to your body. I shall have to use my own magic to pull it from your body. And then, of course, Hypaxia does take the venom out of Bryce's body, and it's a very sweet scene, and Hunt kisses her, and it's like kind of the beginning of their romance. This is used to create the antidote. We'll get there when we get there. So again, going back to what Rune tells us about Apollyon breeding the Kristallos, we are told that it's bred to track the horn a few times, and one of these sources is from the Fae archives, which is not completely unreliable, right? And I kept kind of waiting, actually, throughout the entire series for this to be disproven. It's never actually disproven, which again, what is going on with Peleus?
I think that the Kristallos was bred to find the horn because the Princes of Hel say that their goal was basically to open the Northern Rift, and they needed the horn to do that. But the idea of it being made from Peleus's blood, I don't think makes any sense, but maybe you were about to get into that.
So in chapter 21 of Crescent City 1, the Star Eater himself bred a new horror just to hunt the horn. Using some blood he managed to spill from Prince Peleus on a battlefield in his own terrible essence. The beast twisted out of the collision of light and darkness. Rune swiped on his phone and the next illustration appeared. This is photos from the Fae archives. The reason he'd had her come here, he had taken this gamble. Bryce recoiled at the grotesque, pale body, the clear teeth bared in a roar. You recognize it, Rune said softly. Bryce shook herself as if to bring herself back to reality and rubbed her thigh absently. That's the demon I found attacking the angel, which was Micah, in the alley on that night. Hunt gave her a sharp look. The one that attacked you too? Bryce gave a small affirmative nod. What is it? It dwells in the darkest depths of the pit, Rune answered, so lightless that the Star Eater named it the Kristallos for its clear blood and teeth. Athalar said, I've never heard of it. Bryce contemplated the drawing. There was never mention of a fucking demon in the research I did on the horn. She met his gaze. No one put this together 2 years ago? I think it's taken 2 years to put it together, Rune said carefully. This volume was deep in the Fae archives with the stuff that's not allowed to be scanned. None of your research would have ever pulled it up. The entire damn thing was in the old language of the Fae, and had taken him most of the night to translate. Throwing in the lingering fog of the mirth root hadn't helped. So this artifact that he found that had the detail about the fact that it was made with Prince Peleus's blood was in the old language. Maybe the Autumn King wrote it, in which case, yeah, like then it would be bullshit. Maybe other like misled, misguided Fae wrote it, in which case it could very well be bullshit. But it was clearly intended to be kept secret. And we do learn that the Kristallos is old, like old as fuck, right? Like has not entered Midgard in a very, very long time. Hunt describes it as a type 6 demon, meaning like a deep, deep demon, and says we're looking for information on something that hasn't entered this world 15,000 years. The fact that no one could ID it suggests it might not have made it into many of the history books, and only a handful of those books survived this long. We find evidence of the Kristallos in art from 15,000 years ago, but about 100 years post Peleus, and this art was on a vase from Parthos. The terracotta vase dated back nearly 15,000 years, after Prince Peleus by about a century, but the Kristallos hadn't yet faded from common memory. She read the brief catalog copy and said, "It's at a gallery in Mercia," which put it a sea and 2,000 miles beyond that from Lunathian. She pulled the computer to her and clicked on the thumbnail, but these photos should be enough. A good sign, Hunt pointed at the image, rendered in black paint against the burnt orange of the terracotta, of the Kristallos demon roaring as a sword was driven through its head by a helmeted male warrior. She leaned toward the screen. How so? That the Kristallos can be killed the old-fashioned way. As far as I can tell, there's no magic or special artifact being used to kill it here. Just plain brute force. That's odd. It says the vase is originally from Parthos. He angled his head. I thought Parthos was a myth, a human fairy tale. I'm skipping a bit. This vase was made by a nymph, not some mythical enlightened human. Maybe Parthos hadn't been wiped off the map entirely by that point. So this is, again, like old, like Parthos's destruction. So the Kristallos is old. Again, we still do not have anything ironclad to indicate that it had been made with Prince Peleus's blood at this point, other than like some old Fae bullshit, because like the Fae do believe that Peleus was a starborn prince. One thing that is interesting though, Rune can track the horn as well, right? Just like the Kristallos. And that is from House of Earth and Blood, Crescent City 1, again, because Prince Peleus's starborn power was woven into the horn itself and it's in my blood, my father thinks I might have some sort of preternatural gift to find it, he admitted. When I was browsing the archives last night, this book jumped out at me. Literally, Bryce asked, browse high. Rune said, it just felt like it shimmered. I don't fucking know. All I know is I was down there for hours and then I sensed the book. And when I saw that illustration of the horn, there it was. The crap I translated confirmed it. So the Kristallos can track the horn, Bryce said, eyes glittering, but so can you. And later, right, he kind of like puts this all together and it's like, oh, I've actually just been drawn to Bryce the whole time.
Right.
Rune has been drawn to Bryce. So something about Rune, too.
Rune is starborn,
Rune is
but
starborn.
that makes
Yeah,
sense.
that's true.
I think what doesn't add up to me here is the idea they used Peleus's blood to make the Kristallos to track the horn, because by the definition that Aedis gave us of starborn, you have to be a descendant of Thea, and Peleus cannot be a descendant of Thea, right? So, and when Peleus used the horn, he broke it, right? So I guess just thinking out loud here, like they could have used Peleus. Maybe it makes sense if it is what we're talking about, what we've been kind of hinting at, that Peleus was gifted some sort of Asteri power when he died. Sorry, he didn't die. I forgot he didn't fucking die. When we're told he died on the battlefield. But like, right, if Peleus was gifted some sort of Asteri power and then Apollyon injured him, I guess, but didn't kill him, and then that was used to create the Kristallos demon, that makes a little bit of sense, I guess. But like this whole thing, so many lies on top of lies.
There are a lot of lies on top of lies. Something had to be true about Peleus, that he was able to even partially wield this horn at all, right? And so what I'm wondering is, was Peleus's blood actually used? And we just, like, I just don't have a fully formed theory about, like, what the fuck is going on with Peleus's blood. We know something was going on with him because he didn't die, number one.
Yeah.
And he used the horn. So, like, what's going on with Peleus?
Yeah. What's going on? I don't know. No, I didn't think we'd have so much Peleus chat this episode, but I'm fine with it. I'm here for it.
And I think he would have had to have used this horn after he was supposed to have been killed because he closed the rift.
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
He closed
so
the rift.
if he, like, say he was resurrected, say he was brought back and his blood was used.
Actually, don't know that Peleus closed the rift at all. We're kind of going on a huge tangent here. Aegis actually says that Selene or Helena closed the rift, but we can get into that later. We're going to do more Peleus talk. We'll figure it out. But anyway, this story doesn't fully make sense.
Hypaxia reinforces that this is an ancient demon through her tutors, right? She's talking to Rune, and Rune is like, you recognize this demon? And she's like, I had very old tutors. They required me to study ancient texts.
Very old.
Very old. Whoops. And
yeah.
Rune just kind of like shakes it off. I don't know why he didn't ask more questions at that point. But anyways, back to the removal of the venom, which I definitely want to talk more about, but we'll keep it brief here. Hypaxia uses the Kristallos venom as an antidote for synth. So this feels important, right? When Bryce goes to get this removed, Hypaxia says, you said on the phone that you received this wound from a Kristallos demon and it was never healed. The venom is still in you. Yes, Bryce said quietly. Hunt hated every bit of pain that laced that word. And you give me permission to use the venom I extract in my experiments as I search for a synth antidote. Bryce glanced at him and he nodded his encouragement. Antidote to synth seems pretty damn important to have, she said. So yes, you have my permission. And then later in the passage it says, the venom, in order to be an effective antidote, needs to be stabilized so it can interact with the synth and reverse its effects. My healing magic, Hypaxia, can do that, but I need to be present in order to hold that stability. I'm trying to find a way for the magic to permanently hold the stabilization so it can be sent out into the world and widely used. I'm just going to paraphrase the rest. So basically, she does successfully extract the venom. I put this in a different section, as you could probably imagine. She extracts the venom. She does successfully create an antidote that is held together by her magic at that point, and it does neutralize synth. Based on what we now know about synth, that it is created with obsidian salt, and the Kristallos demon's venom, which negates magic, neutralizes synth, like neutralizes it completely. I do think that this is a point for the Kristallos demon having something else about it. Right. Something else that's not just Hel, that's not just Apollyon, if it is neutralizing salt completely.
It not only is the antidote to synth, it later becomes the antidote to the Asteri parasite, right? Because Hypaxia says that she used the antidote for synth as the base, as the antidote to the Asteri parasite. So is that just the eating magic ability of the Kristallos? Like, is that what this is? Or is there something else going on here? It's very, very confusing.
It's confusing, but I think the fact, whether they're right or wrong about the Peleus part, I think there has to be something Asteri within the Kristallos because of the eating magic part.
I think it could be. Well, Hunt speculates that might be from Apollyon, right? The quote is, if the Star Eater himself put his essence in the Kristallos, that's probably what gave the demon the ability to eat magic, just as Prince Peleus's blood gave it the ability to look for the horn. So we have Apollyon on one hand and we have Starborn power on the other, like basically making this, which is crazy. Like, it's kind of crazy.
I mean, and I guess the Asteriness does also need to be there because it's looking for a trove item. Yeah, the question is it Peleus or is it not Peleus?
I don't know. Like, it doesn't make sense for it to be anyone but Peleus because this demon was created to hunt down the horn so that they could reopen the Northern Rift. And Thea and Helena had the horn when they were allied with Hel, right? So they wouldn't have needed this demon. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Like Apollyon would not have need to have made this beast if Thea and Helena really still had the horn.
Maybe it's Helena's blood. Maybe they just used Helena's blood. Somehow. But
again, I think that Apollyon would have needed to have created it, unless Apollyon didn't, which would be fucking crazy. But I think he would have needed to have created it before the rift closed. Because how was he getting back through the rift?
So why were the princes hunting for the horn? Where else did they want to go? But how could they have wielded it? Oh, because Thea was going to go live with Aedis. And she did want to conquer all these realms. But Thea had the horn. Now I'm so
Well, there
confused.
had to be a time, right, between when Thea was killed and when Peleus closed. Or whoever closed the rift.
Yeah.
That time, that like in between had to have existed. And I think that had to have been the time that Apollyon created and released the Kristallos, I think.
I think
Unless
you're right.
On the other side of the rift and just like waited for somebody to summon a demon and like shove the Kristallos through.
Well, there's cracks. They can send people like they sent the Thunderbirds through.
But then he needed something
that's...
that allowed it to track the horn. And Helena was only sending herself there in her brain.
don't have an
But
answer.
we know the important thing here is
I don't have
that
an
we
answer.
know that the Kristallos did in fact hunt the horn because Micah was summoning it for some time to do that for him. And the Kristallos venom does negate magic and was used to create the synth antidote and later the parasite antidote. Mostly, it was the framework.
I agree.
Tough.
So I would say that this is actually an argument against Bryce having Asteri power, because we are told the Princes of Hel say that the Kristallos venom does not work on the Asteri, right? Like Bryce is like, why didn't you just sick the Kristallos on the Asteri? And I think Apollyon says their magic wasn't, the Kristallos couldn't eat their magic, basically, right? And we know when Bryce had the Kristallos venom in her leg, she didn't or couldn't summon her starlight until it was pulled out of her. She does later have a line like, the Kristallos venom like hurt her magic but couldn't hurt her. So I don't know, maybe there's a little wiggle room, but I would say that's a point against. And I do want to acknowledge the points against the Bryce has Asteri power theory. So that's a point against it. And the other interesting thing too is that I think it's interesting that the hunt for the horn was blocked by the Archesian amulet, right? So the Archesian amulet was powerful enough that it could throw the Kristallos demon off the trail of hunting this horn. So why? Like, what is that? Like, what's the power of the Archesian amulet that it can block this demon who was literally created to hunt down the horn with the essence of Apollyon? Like, how powerful is this thing? I think it's kind of crazy because they're said to be human made, right? The Archesian amulets were made by the priestesses at Parthos, right? So what is this magic? Like, I don't know. Kind of crazy. All right. That was world's longest chat on the Kristallos. Now let's talk about the shepherd. I don't really have any theories about the shepherd.
It's like a fun Cerberus comp.
Keep it brief. I didn't compare it to Cerberus at all, but I definitely should have. All right. So real quick, high level, we know that the shepherd is basically a hound, a hellhound, if you will, that Thanatos has created and that was left behind. That was left behind after the First Wars, or what people on Midgard call the First Wars, to spy for Thanatos. The Underking thinks it's his, but Thanatos actually created it. So the interesting things I think we have about the shepherd is that we are immediately given scale vibes for the shepherd. So the quote is, the dog's fur, sleek and iridescent enough that it almost resembled scales, flowed over bulky bunched muscle, claws like razor blades sliced dry into the ground, right? Again, as a reminder, for Daglan hounds, we get a writhing sea of black scaled body silvered by her light appeared. And then for the Illyrians, obviously we have the scaled armor. So again, it's like scales all over the place. It's immune to Hunt's lightning, which kind of makes sense, but kind of doesn't. Like, we've seen Hunt's lightning work on other demons, so why does it not work on the shepherd? So the quote we have for that is, Hunt struck again, forked lightning, splitting the sky before it slammed into the creature's back, but it rolled once more, shaking off the lightning. The fuck, Hunt panted, drawing his sword and gun as he moved in front of Bryce.
Once you understand Thanatos' attachment to the shepherd, making it immune to hellfire would make sense.
Because he was worried that, like, well, actually, this gets back to your idea of the Demon Wars, right? If this was made by Thanatos and he wanted to make something that would be good against Apollyon, if Apollyon and Thanatos were fighting, I think that could make sense. Okay, and then we have, which is probably your Cerberus comp, it can peel apart. So the quote we have is, then the hound peeled apart, first its head split, two other heads joining the first, and then the three-headed dog really should have caught this. Continued to separate until three hounds snarled at them. Three beasts that shared one mind, one goal, kill. I was so dumb. I was reading, I was like, why did it stop at 3? Why didn't it make 100 versions of itself? This is so stupid. Because it's fluffy. All right. Once again, it's killed by the Star Sword, right? So we get Hunt screamed as Bryce leapt in front of his power. This is when they're learning that they can charge each other up. So as his lightning hit the black blade, exploding from the metal, flowing up into her arm, her body, her heart, light flashed, blinding. No, that was Bryce. Power crackled from every inch of her, and from the Star Sword she clenched in one hand as she barreled toward the shepherd. It split into 3 hounds again, and as the first beast landed, Bryce struck. The glowing Star Sword pierced the thick hide. Lightning exploded across the beast's body. I think this is interesting because it is basically Bryce taking in Hunt's lightning, right? She's being charged up by Hunt's lightning. She's converting that into her starlight, or whatever the starlight is. But then the Star Sword is still kind of being a conduit for the lightning, right? Because we get Light flash, blinding. No, that was Bryce. Power crackle from every inch of her, and from the star sword she clenched in one hand as she barreled toward the shepherd. So that's light, right? Then we get lightning exploded across the beast's body, right? So it's kind of an interesting conversion of powers here. And once again, basically the star sword is killing the unkillable. And then later, of course, we find out the shepherd was actually a spy for Thanatos. So we get the Underking said you abandoned it after the first wars, abandoned or intentionally planted. Great, fantastic. I had no interest in being its lunch, Bryce said. Thanatos' eyes flared. It cost me a keeling to Midgard. The shepherd reported faithfully to me on all it heard in the bone quarter. The souls of the dead talk freely of their world, right? So it can overhear the souls of the dead, basically.
Yeah, that's almost exactly what I had. I mean, it is poetic of Thanatos to put a Cerberus like shepherd of souls, a shepherd of souls. He calls it almost exactly. I think he does actually call it exactly. A shepherd of souls for a prince who peddled them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it said a shepherd of souls.
For a prince who peddled them.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
In the bone quarter. Yeah. And I think we also talked in our Danica episode about how Baxian's hellhound form looks like the shepherd. Yeah. I don't think
a lot
he can
like
grow
the
multiple
shepherd.
heads or split into multiple forms, but looks like the shepherd's big black hound.
I do think we know there are more of these in Hel, right? Thanatos has hounds around him in Hel, so this may not be the last we've seen of a shepherd. I mean, I think the question here is, right, like what other creatures has Thanatos created and potentially put in other worlds? Like, is this it, or does he have ears everywhere? Is he running a master spy network, much like Aedis or Azrael?
Like, given he said left or intentionally planted, I would start wondering about all of these hounds that have been left in the Hewn City. I'm wondering about them.
I am wondering about them. You mean the
Daglin? Yeah.
The Daglin hounds. Like, could one of them not be a Daglin hound?
Yep.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Makes sense. Okay, good. That was quick. All right.
Yeah.
Good for the next one. All right, Ronnie. Why can't a black crown hold?
All right. So we are told by the Princes of Hel, while in quote Hel, that a black crown can't hold a Prince of Hel. So this is again in Crescent City 3, chapter 59. Apollyon's eyes glimmered like coals as he said to Hunt, I am disappointed to see that you have not yet freed yourself from the black crown, Orion Athalar. Someone explain what the fuck that is, Hunt snapped, which is fair because we've heard a lot about the black crown ahead of this without being told what it is. Of all the things he'd ever imagined for his life, sitting in a circle with 3 Princes of Hel hadn't been anywhere on the list. The black crowns were callers in Hel, Thanatos answered darkly. His powerful body seemed primed to leap across that pit to attack. Hunt monitored his every breath. Spells crafted by the Asteri to enslave us. They were a binding, one the Asteri adapted in their next war upon Midgard. Hunt turned to Aedis. You seem surprised to see one on me that first time we met. Why? But before Aedis could begin, Apollyon answered, because the Princes of Hel cannot be contained by the black crowns. The Asteri learned that. It was their downfall. As you were made by Hel's princes, it should not be able to hold you. So Hunt, notably, this is just additional context, has had 2 black halos, right? One was put on him by a witch, and the second one was marked by Rigellus himself. So we get the 2 of them kind of compared. So the first one we learned about in House of Earth and Blood, chapter 61, he is asked, does the halo hurt you? Hunt says, only when it went on. What witch... This is Hypaxia. What witch inked it? Some imperial hag, Hunt said through his teeth, one of the old ones. The witch's face tightened. It is a darker aspect of our work that we bind individuals through the halo. It should be halted entirely. So, imperial hag put on his first halo. Then, House of Flame and Shadow, chapter 8. What a sorry state you're in, the prince of the pit purred. He remained hidden in the shifting shadows. The demon prince inhaled as if tasting the air. What delicious pain you feel. I'd be happy to share. This is Hunt. A terrifyingly soft laugh. Your good humor, it seems, remains intact, even with the halo inked anew upon your brow. Hunt smiled savagely. I had the honor of having it done by Rigellus's hand this time. Interesting that he would do it himself rather than employ an imperial hag. Do you detect a difference? Hunt's chin dipped. This one stings. The hag's halo felt like cold iron. This one burns like acid. And then later in chapter 37, he says he could have sworn its ink seared him every now and then. It had never done that before, but this halo inked by Rigellus felt different, worse, alive somehow. So the witches is described as like a dormant iron, like restraint. basically. Whereas the one that Rigelus puts on,
Yeah.
it like actively searing him, almost as like he flares up his own power. It's like, no, sit the fuck down, actually. Like, you're not gonna use your power here because I'm restraining you. We're told this is an old method of the Asteri. It's existed for millennia. That's not super interesting. And then once Hunt actually tries to destroy the Black Crown, when he and Celestina have a confrontation at the Northern Rift, he has no problem slicing through it once he kind of decides to do it. What's interesting, I think, is that he can also slice through Isaiah's, which is not really something that Apollyon alluded to him being able to do. Like, it shouldn't be able to contain you. He didn't necessarily say you can actually get it off of anyone. So that was wild. But that passage is in chapter 79 of Crescent City 3. And he says, a leash to hold demons in check. It hadn't worked on the princes. He'd be damned if he allowed it to keep working on him. Hunt let his power build and build and build. The snow around him melted away. Apollyon had given his essence, his hellfire, to Hunt, and if that made him a son of hell, so be it. Hunt closed his eyes and he saw it there, the black band of the halo imprinted across his very soul, its scrolling vine of thorns, the spell to contain him. Everyone knew the enslavement spell couldn't be undone, and had never even tried, but he was done playing by the Asteri's rules, by anyone's rules. Hunt reached a mental hand toward the black thorns of the halo, wreathed his fingers in lightning and hellfire in the power that was his and only his, and sliced through it. The thorns of the halo shivered and bled. Black ink dripped down, dissolving into nothing, gobbled up by the power that was now surging in him, rising up. And then he undoes Isaiah's. So he sliced a line through the halo on his brow. Isaiah hissed, staggering back. So he's able to get rid of his. He's also able to get rid of Isaiah's. Isaiah's presumably is still done by an Imperial Hag. So again, I'm not too sure exactly what the difference is. There clearly is a difference between what the witch put in. It seems like that one is use of iron, which again, we've been told bears no meaning here, but seems to. Yeah. And Hunt has no problem just killing it. And Rigelus says he has no issue either. Why? This is a question. Like, why can it not be contained? We are told in chapter 60 by Apollyon that it basically is related to the same properties that link them to black salt. So that quote is, if Avalon is one of the stronger thin places, why the Asteri even allow the Fae to live here? The black salt in such high quantity keeps them away. They never realized that its presence drew us as much as it repelled them, Apollyon said with satisfaction. It has the same properties that made us immune to the thrall of their black crowns. Here's what I think this means, because the wording is actually pretty tricky. It has the same properties that made us immune to the thrall of their black crowns, and the it is the black salt. Yeah, so I think what Apollyon is saying, I think, is that the black salt does something to Asteri energy. It repels or neutralizes it. It's essentially like anti-Asteri matter, substance. And Apollyon is saying that he and his kind, like the princes, have that same intrinsic property in their nature that black salt has as a substance. So whatever it is about black salt that pushes Asteri away is also baked into what Apollyon is and the other princes are. So black salt repels the Asteri physically, magically away from Avalon and like other physical locations. Apollyon's nature, same, repels the Asteri's thrall from his mind, his power. So the same like anti-Asteri property, two different expressions of it, salt and the prince's innate nature. That's how I understand it.
Very clear. Thank you. That actually helped me a lot because I was very struggling with this. It's very confusing. But what I think is interesting, a couple things. I was smiling while you were chatting because it only just occurred to me that Imperial Hag is like an official position here. I thought it was just a mean nickname, but I think there actually is an Imperial
Hag. It's a real
Hag
role
in the Asteri army.
It's a role.
Yeah, it's a true role. So congratulations to the Imperial
Congratulations
Hag.
to that.
I think this is interesting because I think it fits with what we were just talking about with the Kristallos and the parasite, right? Because the way that the crown is described when Rigelus puts it on, as if it's almost alive, right? Like that seems like the same idea as the parasite, right? It's alive, it's sucking on Hunt's it's feeding on Hunt's magic. It's stealing his magic, right? And then the antidote to that is the Kristallos, which is made from Apollyon's essence. And and Hunt is not able to be held by a black crown because he also has, again, Apollyon. I don't know if it's Apollyon specifically or just all hell, whatever that is, in his essence, which I think is interesting.
So here's where the Kristallos as the antidote kind of breaks down for me, because I went exactly where you went, but this is why I think that the Kristallos has to have, like, when it has something Asteri about it because it allows it to track down the horn. Synth has black salt. That's the part where I'm like, what is actually going on here? Like the neutralizing, like the fact that there's Apollyon and the fact that there's black salt, like those based on this should be like and like, but we also have, like, we have to have something Asteri on the Kristallo side if it's tracking the horn. I think. I don't know.
If it's tracking the horn. I think so too. And whether that's Peleus' starborn power or something else, I think so too. So like all these people who inject synth and live, are they immune to the parasite? Are they immune to Asteri power? Like if it has black salt in it? Like what's going on there? That might just be a fun fanfic opportunity there. I don't know. I'm just putting that out there. Synth kind of dies and never comes back, and I actually thought it was so interesting, and I wish it had kind of stayed. Maybe it'll be back in book 4. I don't know.
The fact that Synth was what healed the horn, in my mind, what it has become for me is just like the obsidian salt of it all, and that's like. But I agree, it needs to come back.
Yeah. All right, guys, we are finally getting to the Aedis part of the episode.
Yes, Abby.
I told you. I said this is going to be so long.
You're right. Maybe the next one will be short. All right, Abby, what are Aedis's powers?
All right. It's not a short list. Unfortunately, that's okay. We'll go through it real quick. All right. So Aedis, first thing, seems to be able to sense people's powers. So we've kind of talked about this with the Princes of Hel, but the first time he meets Hunt, we get a fallen warrior with the power of ... You might have just read this. Aedis's groomed brows lifted in surprise, his blue opal eyes narrowed to slits, then simmered like the hottest flame. What are you doing with a black crown around your brow, right? So like he meets Hunt and he immediately clocks, this guy has Hel powers, which is interesting, right? That means they weren't like keeping an eye on Hunt. They didn't know who Hunt was. Hunt just was kind of out there, and now they're like, oh, this guy. This is
more evidence for that they were maybe at odds with each other, because Apollyon seems quite attuned with who Hunt is. Aedis is, and Apollyon at one point was like, I'm not responsible for the motions of my brother. Like, I don't know where he was. But hi, Orion. Yeah. Like, are you fulfilling your purpose?
Yeah, that's a great point. Apollyon seems to know exactly who Hunt is and how to talk to him in dreams, which we will talk about next episode. All right, so Aedis can, and we were told that all the Princes of Hel can, but we only see this with Aedis, sneak through cracks in worlds. So the quote we get for that is, Jesiba told me that the princes can sneak through cracks in either rift, taking the form of common animals, but then they're confined to those forms with none of their own power save the ability to speak, and they can only stay for a few hours at a time. So that is Crescent City 1, chapter 51. So we're told this is all the princes, but we only see it from Aedis. I also want to add here, they almost certainly learned how to do this from the Asteri. The quote we have for that, this is from that Asteri timeline, is a dark, cold world with mighty creatures of night. They saw through our lures, once warring factions, the royal armies of Hel united and marched against us. We were overwhelmed and abandoned their world, but they gave chase. Learned from our captured lieutenants how to slip between the cracks in realms. This was an originally Asteri power that it seems like the Princes of Hel not only learned how to do, but can do. And I feel like we're just like circling around this the whole episode. Like there's a lot of fucking overlaps between these two powers in both the way they are the same and like the way they are opposites. So like she seems to be building towards this idea of like, we get it a lot, like made and unmade, light and dark, matter and antimatter. Like these two are kind of at the opposite ends of the spectrum, the Asteri and the princes. We also get some intention reading, I think, which we don't really talk about much in the Maasverse, but has popped up as a power in other series we've covered. So he says to Bryce when he's in her apartment, we have, what sort of cat visits an oracle? Winning first words. Aedis slid his hands into his pockets again. I did not know what you might prefer now that you are grown. So he either just assumed like a 13-year-old girl would want a talking cat as a friend, or he could like read something about Bryce and say, oh, no, like you're going to want to talk to a cat right now. And then we know he like kind of senses her emotions. So the quote we have for that is, Aedis. Aedis tilted his head to one side. You were very sad then as well. So he knows when she's 13 that she was very sad, knows now she's very sad about Danica, right? Yeah. So like, is he just an empath, or can he actually like read her feelings, read her emotions, like some sort of, I wouldn't call it even mind speaking or mind reading, but just like, I can sense your emotions type thing. I'd do everything I just said, because then we see him and Apollyon have a wordless conversation in the dungeon cell. So we have the Princes of Hel. This is when Aedis and Apollyon are cloaked in shadow. The Princes of Hel looked at each other, some wordless conversation passing between them, right? So wordless conversation there. And then this I thought was really interesting. He seems to know that the Asteri are planning to kill Rune. This is again in the dungeon. Rigellus has come and said one of your companions is going to be killed tomorrow. He somehow knows that it's Rune. So the quote is, I am sorry that one of your companions will die tomorrow. Fuck, Hunt said hoarsely. Any idea who they've picked? Aedis angled his head, more feline than princely, like he could hear things that Hunt couldn't. And then he says it's going to be Rune, because Rune matters more to both you and Bryce. So like, is he mind reading here? Yeah. Is he listening to thoughts? Like, I mean, Apollyon later says to Hunt, right? Like your thoughts are broadcast to me, right? So it's really not that crazy. I think what's a little more interesting is what he cannot do, or what I don't have proof that he can do, which is shadow wielding, right? So the first time that Hunt sees Aedis in the dungeon, he's in a shadow. He's with Apollyon. So the quote for that is, Apollyon appeared again, a second shadow at his side, taller and thinner with eyes like blue opals. Where is Bryce? Hissed the Prince of the Chasm, which is Aedis. I guess we should have mentioned that. Aedis is the Prince of the Chasm. Yeah. But the second time Aedis appears, he's on his own. Apollyon is not there, and he's a cat again. Right? So we have Orion. Aedis's voice sounded in his head in the chamber. It's pretty clear mind speaking right there, right? Also, if he's a cat, how is he talking to any of these people? I think it's got to be mind speaking. All right. Orion, Aedis's voice sounded in his head in the chamber. A cat with eyes like blue opals crouched on the floor amid the blood and waste, the same form Rigellus had used to deceive Hunt months ago, right? So I think it's really interesting that the second time he comes back, he's not coming back as a shadow. He's coming back as a cat, right? And I think obviously the reason that this is interesting is because I've hypothesized that the shadow wielding ability of the Starborn line might actually be from Aedis, but I don't know that he has that power. I don't know that it can come from him. So the other thing that I think is interesting is that he cannot winnow. We like actually have confirmation of this, because in the final battle against the Asteri, we get Aedis unsheathed this is a tongue twister. Aedis unsheathed a shining silver blade that seemed to glow with bluish light. My turn, the demon prince said, the dry breeze whipping his pale blonde hair. He asked Bryce, a ride? Hunt had only a moment to glimpse the worry, the fear in her eyes as she grabbed Aedis's hand, then Hunt's, and teleported them. With the power of Thea's star, it barely took a moment, barely seemed to drain her. So that is Crescent City 3, chapter 90. So Aedis can't winnow on his own. Yeah. He's asking Bryce to winnow him, right? Which we had speculated in the Starborn Fae episode that is actually an Asteri, a world-walking power. I think that's confirmation here. And again, we get that the Princes of Hel can slip through the cracks in the realms, but not that they can like open portals themselves. So I just think that lines up with...
Yeah, then they just would.
Yeah, if they can world walk, they wouldn't need it. They wouldn't need the horn. Yeah. So I'm not sure on shadows, and a definite no on the winnowing. Everything else, probably Daemati.
I think I'm with you on not sure on shadows, because Rune, we get the direct comp of Rune cloaking Lydia as well as they move through the castle.
And Asriel cloaks Feyre in the King of Hybern camp.
We already know for sure that shadow walking is not only something that you do to yourself. Like, you can also do it to others if you can't do it at all. So I agree with you.
Exactly. Yeah. Anything else on Aedis's
I
powers.
mean, you did mention, but I think it's just worth mentioning, like, he is the prince of the 5th level of hell, which is the prince of the chasm. And it's not really a power, but I do want to talk about his raw form, because his humanoid form we know very well, which is, he's blonde, blue-eyed baby. Pretty boy, I think is the exact description. Slender, pale-skinned pretty boy. Thank you, Hunt. But his true form, right, the princes are all kind of described this way, at least the ones that we see. Creatures of darkness and decay, mouths full of sharp teeth, leathery wings splayed. Like the princes themselves in their true form have leathery wings, including Aedis, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I'd also like to nominate him. I know that it's not exact, but I'd like to nominate Aedis as someone to add to the camp of blue eyes that glow. I know that they're lighter, they're more opal than sapphire, but in Hel, they are literally described as 2 blue lights as they're approaching. Like, not even eyes,
Right.
They're 2 blue lights. And like, it's like very consistent even when he is in his shadow form and his true form. So
yeah,
I think it's interesting. That's all.
I agree. It's a big episode of I think it's interesting.
That's kind of Hel for you. I think it's interesting.
Interesting place. Sounds lovely. All right, next question. Ronnie, what does Aedis know about Prithian, and when did he find out?
Okay, we're almost done, guys, I promise. During Celine's recounting of hers and Thea's and like her family's life at the beginning of House in Flame and Shadow, she describes Aedis's alleged first words to Thea as, "Have you come to ask for Hel's help then?" And those are not first-time words with no familiarity. So let's discuss those. So context for that quote is House, Flame, and Shadow, chapter 20. "My mother had kept the star map that the Daglin had long ago annotated, and a world on it had caught her attention. A world like ours that had overthrown the Daglin. In an elaborate bedroom, standing before a desk with her 2 daughters, Thea waved a hand. As if she pulled them from that pocket of nothingness, the harp and the horn appeared on the desk, glimmering alongside the star sword and the knife. Thea nodded once, slowly, as if making a decision, so she's been thinking about this, and then played the horn and the harp. A portal between worlds swirled. It solidified, an archway to nowhere. A handsome golden-haired male stood before it, with eyes like blue opals." Bryce inhaled sharply. "Prince Aedis only asked my mother one thing when she opened the gate to his world. Have you come to ask for Hel's help then?" So the way Celine is describing this story is like, Thea had been researching. Thea's aware of this world. It caught her attention. She, after a long time, decided to reach out to them. But like, she knew exactly who to call. She knew which world to access. She knew how to access it. This does not seem, at least to me, like it was a first-time encounter, despite what Celine may have described in the subsequent texts about Aedis and her mother kind of developing a connection over the coming months. But I think we get an important hint from her in that story that she tells immediately after, and that is that he had been tracking the Asteri conquests since they failed to conquer Hel. Celine says Aedis was a prince of Hel, blah, blah, blah. Using rare summoning salts that facilitated communication between worlds, spies in Midgard had kept him well informed since the Asteri had failed to conquer his planet. Aedis had been assigned to hunt for the Asteri ever since, so that their evil might never triumph again on his world or any other. So let's go back to the timeline to figure out what the fuck was going on here, because spoiler alert, it does not really make sense. So House of Sky and Breath, chapter 72. Hel lost AE 17001.
Yeah.
Once warring factions, the royal armies of Hel united and marched against us. We were overwhelmed, abandoned their world, but they gave chase. Sure. So this is, again, in the Asteri archives in Dusk. We learn that they lost Hel in 17001. They found us on Midgard in 17002. And this Thea calling Aedis in that moment was supposedly from Midgard. After she learned, shit, we actually just walked into this world in which the Asteri are actually in power. So, and then we learn we lost a third of our meals to them. War lasted until nearly the end of 17003. So if this timeline is all that there is to ponder, then we only have 2 years of Aedis keeping tabs on the Asteri, right? Which doesn't leave tons of room for Thea and Aedis to get familiar with each other. So until nearly the end of 17003, they were defeated and sent back to Hel, far too dangerous to allow them to access this world again. So this should imply that Aedis had been hunting for the Asteri for only 2 years before the end of the First Wars, where they were kicked out via the Rift. Before this, though, on Prythian, Thea and Fion ruled for centuries. It says centuries. And the Daglin had been there for millennia before that. So according to this, right, like according to that timeline, Aedis should not have been watching over Prythian since Hel was conquered during that time, because Hel was conquered in like 2 years before the First Wars ended. And so just for evidence of the centuries, quote, and with the Daglin gone as the centuries passed, as the tithe was no longer demanded of us or the land, our power strengthened, the land strengthened. It returned to what it had been before the Daglin's arrival, millennia before. But I think we do have reason to believe that Hel and Aedis potentially were involved and aware of Prithian before this, and this is why. And we've talked about this a little bit, but I'll keep it snappy. But first, we know that Thea didn't have children for centuries with Fion, and then she suddenly did, right? That, combined with the familiarity with which Aedis greeted her and the shadowy daemoni powers of her offspring, make a pretty strong case that she and Aedis did know each other, or like could have been meeting in secret and potentially bore Selene and Helena. Potentially. That's all theoretical. It would also kind of explain how she so easily killed Fion if she like knew that she loved somebody else. And that quote is, after centuries with an empty womb, my mother bore both my sister and me within a span of 5 years. My father was fading by then. He was centuries older than my mother. Second, while Selene doesn't go into detail, she says that her parents told her that they used the Trove and the Cauldron, the Daglin's own weapons, right, to fight the Daglin and win. That's all she says. She doesn't say much, but she says they fought the Daglin and won. She went on, using the Daglin's own weapons, they destroyed them. So what would that actually entail, right? You would wear the mask and you would have an army of the dead. You would have the crown and you would control anyone, but not made people. So not the Asteri. And then you would have the horn and the harp to open up to another world. That's like what the horn and the harp do. So if you're using the Daglin's own weapons, like, what are you doing? This also would work, right? Because they talk about the cauldron, and this is a plug for our cauldron episode. The cauldron has tons of Hel influence. If they were fucking with the cauldron and using the cauldron, and they were in league with Hel, is that how the cauldron ended up so helly? But this is the damning point, right? Third, in A Court of Silver Flames, Emery tells us of a key battle about ancient beings who oppressed the Fae, in which Analius held the pass until allies came, right? Long ago, so long ago, they don't even have a precise date for it. A great war was fought between the Fae and the ancient beings who oppressed them. One of its key battles was here in these mountains. Our forces were battered and outnumbered, and for some reason, the enemy was desperate to reach the stone at the top of Ramiel. We were never taught the reason why. I think it's been forgotten. But a young Illyrian warrior named Analius, who we know was living at the time of Vesperus, right, because she mentions him as a traitor, held the line against the enemy soldiers for days. He found a natural archway, which has been connected to portals, amongst the tangle of boulders, and made that his bottleneck. He died in the end, but he held off the enemy enough for our allies to reach us. We all know that this was a battle against the Asteri, and Vesperus knows that Analius was a traitor. So who were these allies? We've talked about this before, right? It feels like it would be Hel. So none of this holds up with Aedis has been tracking the Asteri since they threw them out of Hel, because that was supposed to only have happened 2 years before the First Wars ended. But if all of that is true, like, I think that we have a lot of reason to believe that Hel was interfering with the Daglin's presence in Prythian, which was millennia before that. So I think that Hel, even if it wasn't Aedis exactly, but Aedis seems to be ageless. The Princes of Hel seem to be ageless. Like, could they have learned things about the Daglin in that battle? Could they have been the allies to Prithian? And, like, could he have met Thea then? Because, like, Thea was the ringleader. Thea and Fion were the ringleaders of overthrowing the Daglin at that time, and they did not do it alone. We know that they didn't do it alone. That's very theoretical, but I'm curious what you have to say.
Well, I talked about this in our reread episode. So first thing, we know that it's 5,000 years that the Daglin ruled. We have the quote, "We were slaves to the Daglin for 5,000 years. Our people, the High Fae, knelt before them." That's in Crescent City 3, chapter 18 with Celine's TED Talk. So the rough timeline that we should have here, I put together, assuming AE is a calendar year the way it is here on Earth, which I don't know, we can confirm that. But basically around 11,500 AE. Asteri conquer Midgard. Then around 16,500 AE, Asteri lost Midgard. And then I'm guessing a couple centuries means I'm just guessing 450 years. I don't know. That's like a total guess. But around 16,950 AE, Thea overthrows Fion. We know her rule is short. Don't know how short, but we know her rule is short. So I guess that was around 50 years, right? So then in basically 17,000 AE is when they go over to Midgard. So we have what you just said, 17,001. So basically 16,500 Asteri lose Midgard. They make their way to Hel. There are also different groups of Asteri. Rigelus tells us that there are different groups of Asteri throughout the land. So it does not have to be like one going to the other, going to the other. Like it could be overlapping. Should not necessarily work. The timeline still should not necessarily work if it's linear, right? Because the Asteri should have lost Hel in 17,001 AE, and the Asteri should have been on Midgard way but 5,000 years before that, basically, right? Like, if not more. It shouldn't work. But I talked about this in our reread episode. We have a concrete piece of evidence that breaks all that, which is the Asteri star map that Thea brings over from Prythian, right? So the quote we have for that is, "My mother had kept the star map that the Daglin had long ago annotated, and a world on it had caught her attention, a world like ours that had overthrown the Daglin." We're not specifically told that this is Hel, but then she goes and opens the portal to talk to Aedis, right? So I'm assuming that it's a fair call that I'm assuming that this star map came over with them from Prythian because we're told they brought star maps with them. I doubt the Asteri are just giving the, well, maybe they had spies. I don't know. But basically the way it's worded, I'm assuming this is a star map from Prythian and that Hel is on there. Because Bryce calls out that there must have been Asteri archives on Prythian, right? Like that feels like important information that's going to come back later. There's also one other interesting piece of key information here that I don't know what to make of it. Vespers has never heard of Hel, right? The quote we have is, "What manner of creature is this Apollyon? We call them demons, but you probably know them by some other name. Your kind tried to invade their world, Hel. It didn't go well for you. Hel and this Apollyon shall pay for such sacrilege," Vespers hit. So she's never heard of Hel. There is a possibility that is because the planet is not actually called Hel, because Bryce later has a quote that says, "We call them demons, but you might know them by another name." So it's possible that they have another name for Hel. Or the timeline we've been given is true and Hel on the star map is an oopsie. None of this makes sense. I don't know. I hate for that to be the answer, but I don't know.
Yeah, I guess she does explicitly say that it was the Daglin that had annotated it.
Yeah. So I think there are some other options here too and other things to look at. And I just want to, the question was, what does Aedis know about Prythian and when did he know it, right? That was the question. So a couple of things he definitely knows about Prythian. He definitely knows about the knife and the sword, and he knew that the dagger was on Prythian. Like he knows that Prythian exists, certainly. And he has known that it existed for a long time, right? So he knows it exists. The quote we have for that, "Selene had this with her when she returned to her homeworld, and now I've brought it back to Midgard. Aedis started at the sight of the dagger," right? So he is like shocked that Bryce was able to go to Prythian, even though he had speculated that maybe she would be on Prythian. Like he's shocked. So he knows something there. We are also told that Prythian, Midgard, and Hel all run atop ley lines, right? So there are ley lines across the whole of the universe, and the planets like Midgard, like Hel, like the home world of the Fae, atop those lines are joined by time and space and the void itself. It thins the veil separating us, right? So timeline does seem fucked and doesn't really seem to matter. But even if you took the Asteri out of the equation, what we're told with these ley lines is that potentially like Hel and Prythian could be in contact anyway if Hel knew how to do it, right?
I guess just like my only question there, and it's not great, but like as soon as Aedis realized that Bryce didn't make it to Hel and thought she might be there, like he didn't try and reach her, and she was in thin places.
I hate to say it given all the theories we've had, but I think it's totally possible Aedis had nothing to do with Prythian. I do think that's possible. Like, it's totally possible. I don't know. But I think what's important now is that Prythian now definitely knows about Aedis.
Yeah, she's like...
And Hel. Because when Bryce comes to Prythian, she starts screaming about Aedis and Apollyon and Hel. So either way, I feel like we're getting set up for a Prythian Hel storyline. I just don't know how much
Yeah.
Aedis has been involved up till now.
No.
All right. Anything else there? All right. Throne of Glass omissions. Do you have any?
Spoilers.
Oh, yeah.
For Throne of Glass.
All right, guys, that is the end of our Crescent City and ACOTAR section. We are now going to do a brief section on Throne of Glass spoilers. So if you don't want to get spoiled, we recommend leaving now. Or you can just skip this chapter and go straight to our precog because it shouldn't be too, I don't think it'll be too long.
Yeah. My precogs don't have Throne of Glass spoilers. So.
My precog does not have Throne of Glass spoilers either. So if you have not read every book in Throne of Glass, just fair warning, you might be spoiled for the next however many minutes we talk about Throne of Glass. So Ronnie, any Throne of Glass omissions?
Okay. I'm gonna save my Valg and Hel tirade for the next episode just because this episode is getting quite long. So I just have I'm gonna keep it to two brief ones here that are like specifically pertinent to this episode. The first is just that the Kristallos venom removal sounded remarkably similar to Irene's removal of Kale's Valg injuries, like a basically mini version of it in House of Earth and Blood, chapter 61. And Kale goes like deep into his psyche and like memories and goes through all of these like dark memories, right? And so his is definitely more mental and deep rooted. I mean, he's fucking paralyzed, so like that just is deeper. But I can't quite get the parallel imagery out of my head of Bryce having like the experience of like acid, her skin was sizzling, bones melting away, like she can barely breathe. Hunt is like there trying to like help her through it, and then she's got Hypaxia, who has a lot of parallels to Irene, and we'll talk more about Hypaxia and the witches, of course, but the witches in Crescent City are very similar to the healers in Throne of Glass. And the entire time that I was reading that scene, I was just like, wow, the parallels of healing and removing of this Kristallos venom, which is like a physical thing that has been eating away at you, is very similar to Irene pulling out a physical thing, like a physical Valg injury that has been also eating away at Kale. So yeah, that was one
like that.
Just fun little parallel that I'm sure we'll talk more about as we talk about Hypaxia. But it was related to the Kristallos venom, so I wanted to throw it in here. And then the second one was about obsidian salt. It is considered black and oily. Again, full Valg Hel tirade next episode, but Valg blood and power is also considered oily all the time. I think it's Crown of Midnight chapter 45. Selena finds the blood of a Valg creature under the castle. She says a half-dried pool of blood lay at the base of the door, so dark it looked like oil. It felt as oily as it looked. She remembers it again later in Air of Fire, and she even calls it obsidian. She describes it as obsidian oily pool of blood. And then in Empire of Storms chapter 15, she also describes wordstone as oily. She says iron as if the man's core was made of it, and that oily, hideous aftertaste, ... wordstone. And then in Kingdom of Ash chapter 70, the pulse of Erewhon's power slithered over Dorian, so terribly similar to the oily power of that Valg prince. The fact that we just talked about the essence of the princes of Hel having the same properties of obsidian salt in that it repels the Asteri and it's like immune to Asteri's thrall. Obsidian salt is described as oily, and so is like literally everything related to Valg power, wordstone, Valg blood is interesting.
I also believe there is that quote about the Throne of Glass gods. I don't remember what book it's in, but about the Throne of Glass gods like fearing obsidian, basically. I don't think I can find it. That's okay. All right. I'll see if I can remember the quote and I'll bring it in at some point. But there is a quote about, I think it's about the gods in Throne of Glass. And it's clearly referencing wordstone, but it says like obsidian they feared the most. And if I'm wrong, you guys will let me know. It's totally fine because I didn't prep this at all. But it is again that idea that I mean, I do like. Are you going as far as to say that obsidian salt might be related to wordstone, or are we just saying it's all very Valg?
I mean, I think that wordstone is either the essence of or is created to mimic the essence of Valg, and obsidian salt seems to also be created to mimic the essence of the Princes of Hel. So I think they're all linked.
I agree. All right. I don't really have anything to add. My Throne of Glass omission was that the Reapers bleed black. We know that. We got it. It's cool. It's all Valg.
They're Valg, guys.
It's all Valg.
Right.
All right. Pre-Cog. Okay. I kind of, yeah, I have one. It's not really a Pre-Cog corner. It's kind of a mythology corner. So I just wanted to talk about Hel in mythology real quick, because I think there's some interesting parallels with what she's doing. It's not necessarily a theory, though. I'm just letting you know right now. So Hel in Norse mythology is both a goddess and a place. So the afterlife location is said to be down and to the north. Interesting that it's to the north. Hello, Night Court. Hello, Hewn City, right? It is said that it will play an important role in Ragnarok. If you guys don't remember what episode it was, but we talked about the Ouroboros mirror that Feyre looks into, has a serpent that's eating itself, Ouroboros, obviously, but that has essence, like, seems to be a reference to Jormungandr, who is a great snake that encircles the world. And it's said that Ragnarok is going to start when Jormungandr, like, basically stops biting himself, releases himself. So we've now gotten kind of 2 Ragnarok mentions, which I think is interesting. This is a description of the road to Hel from the website, and I quote, Norse mythology for smart people. So it's for smart people. So we get, while he was living with Ragnhild, Jesus Christ, I should have looked up pronunciations. I'm very sorry to all our Nordic listeners. All right. While he was living with Ragnhild, Hadding had another mysterious experience. A woman appeared bearing some herbs. Wishing to know where such herbs grew in winter, Hadding went with this woman under the earth. They passed through mists and then through sunny, fertile regions where the herbs had grown. Then they came to a raging torrent flowing with weapons. Crossing by a bridge, they came upon armies of fallen warriors locked in eternal battle. As they pressed forward, a wall stood in their way. They could go no further, but the woman tore off the head of a cock, meaning a chicken in this case, not a penis, which she happened to have with her, and flung it over the wall. Immediately, the cock came to life and crowed. So I think there's like a lot of interesting parallels here to Bryce's journey through the tunnels to get to the prison, right? So we start with the herbs. This is this guy's journey to Hel. The woman who appears bearing herbs, right? That's where we start. When Bryce gets to Prithian, Sarah specifically calls out the herbs in her dish, which seems really strange. But she mentions that the herbs that she gets with her meal when she's being held under the Hewn City, I think, are rosemary. And she's like, oh, they must have herbs, the same herbs here or something, which I always thought was like a really weird comp. But now we have this Hel story. Like, is she trying to draw a comparison here? And then they pass through the mist is the next. This seems pretty self-evident. We've talked like, misty place, thin place. And then we have sunny, fertile regions. We know that that's how the prison used to be before the Daglin corrupted it. So this is kind of, again, a parallel. And then we have this came to a raging torrent flowing with weapons. Crossing by a bridge, they came upon armies of fallen warriors locked in eternal battle, right? We have Bryce crossing the bridge with where Nesta's like, oh, you froze out there, right? When she sees the Midgard worm. We have Bryce crossing the bridge. And then we have depictions of battle. So it's not an actual battle, but we have these carvings that Celine has left that are these pictures of the battle. And then as they press forward, a wall stood in their way. They could go no further, which obviously we have a wall, right? We have a wall with an 8-pointed star that Bryce touches and Nesta. And then a door opens to the harp chamber. So I think it's really interesting that this is like, it's supposed to be the road to Hel, but it's leading us to Duskcourt. Like there's so many parallels with Bryce's journey to Duskcourt. And we know that Avalon is like intricately linked to Hel with the black salt. We haven't necessarily seen that with the prison, but like, if they're all on top of each other, does that mean Duskcourt has, and I'm going to say Vesperus, like leave the princes out of it. Even Vesperus at this point, like does Duskcourt have stronger ties to Hel than we've kind of been led to believe thus far, right? I just think it's interesting.
Vesperus seeming less Asteri than any other Asteri keeps me up at night.
I would agree with that.
Not for today.
All right, what's your Pre-Cog theory?
So I'm going to flip mine because you basically almost got there in this episode, so might as well do it here. And this, to be clear, this one is crazy. So I know that it's probably not true. Okay, but this is just for fun. It's for fun. Okay. So we have talked about how Bryce is Starborn, and she seems super different from all of the other Starborn princes, Starborn lineage. She doesn't have any of the classic traits. She doesn't seem like she got anything from Selene and Helena, right? Like the dark-colored hair, the blue eyes, the shadows, the Daemati. She doesn't have that. You also mentioned in this episode that we're not sure that Aedis can wield shadows. We haven't seen Aedis wield shadows. I guess we have seen him mind speak. So there's that. But we have seen Aedis appear to Bryce basically whenever, right? Like we've seen him come to her as a cat whenever it suits him, basically. We haven't seen Apollyon do that, right? Apollyon needs to come on the autumnal equinox when the veil between worlds is thin. But he can come to Hunt whenever. Like whenever he wants. Because Hunt is tied to him, right? My question is it possible that Aedis can talk to Bryce whenever because he is family? He is parental lineage in some regard. Like he and Thea did create a line of sorts, but it's not Selene and Helena. It's actually not Selene and Helena. And Selene and Helena maybe they are Fions, but maybe they have essence of Apollyon or somebody who does have shadows, right? So they have a specific tie to Hel that is maybe not Aedis's. Maybe it's not Aedis's tie. And maybe Bryce specifically is tied to Aedis. And that's why she has such a strong connection to him and he to her and does not have as much in common with Selene or Helena. It's because they have different ties to different princes.
So my precog next episode is how I think it's actually Apollyon, who might be the father of Helena and Selene. And I actually have a lot to go off of there.
Yeah.
So that's what I was getting there because I also got there. But it's really interesting. Yeah, so what do we think? Like Aedis fucked Ember? Like, I don't, like, how does it work? You know? Like, what do we think? How do we think Aedis was involved? Ember.
But I think Aedis could have started a line with Thea that went a different direction.
Different child that we
there
don't know
could be
about.
a third that we do not know about. The precog theory that is crazy is that Thea and Aedis have a different line that went to Bryce.
Yeah.
So Aedis's investment in Bryce is paternal. It's like literally like, you are my family. I am looking after you. I can visit you whenever because you are genetically tied to me, just like Hunt is genetically tied to Apollyon. And that's why Apollyon can visit Hunt whenever. You don't have shadows because I don't have shadows, but Selene and Helena do because Apollyon's genetics are at play there, not mine.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
But I look forward to your precog next episode to make more sense of it.
Yeah. Okay, that is it from us for this week. You can follow us on social media. We are Dragons in the Details Pod on all social media platforms. We are on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. We are on Discord. I actually think we say this wrong every time. I think we're Dragons in the Details server. I don't think we're Dragons in the Details Pod server. But you can find us on Discord.
I say Dragons in the Details server every time.
Okay, we are Dragons in the Details server. We are on Discord. We have a lot of fun there. A lot of our conversations are kind of sparked by what's happening on the Discord. So if you want to join in, that is a great time. You can email us dragonsinthedetailspod@gmail.com. And as always, please remember to rate, subscribe, and review if you like us or if you don't. All I can see is a black phone. You're blurry.
Dragons in the Details server.
Dragons in the Details server. Yes, that is the name of our Discord. That is it from us this week. We're going to keep talking about Hel next week. It's basically part 2 to this episode. We're going to talk about, what are their names? Apollyon and Thanatos.
Apollyon and Thanatos.
Apollyon and Thanatos. That is it from us for this week. Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.